The day Marissa Hale fired mechanic Ethan Cole, she had no idea she was destroying a decorated Navy hero. Until a military helicopter descended from the clouds, rotors screaming, and an officer shouted a classified name that would shatter everything she thought she knew. This is the story of a single father hiding behind grease stains and silence, a CEO blinded by control, and the moment when truth landed harder than any helicopter ever could. Stay with me until the end. This gets intense. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. You won't believe what happens next. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps, casting harsh white shadows across the concrete floor of Hale Automotive Solutions. The smell was familiar: motor oil, brake fluid, the metallic tang of tools meeting metal, and beneath it all, the faint aroma of burned coffee from the break room that nobody ever cleaned. It was 7:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, and Ethan Cole was already 2 hours into his shift. His hands moved with practiced efficiency across the engine block of a 2018 Ford Explorer, fingers tracing sensor wires with the kind of precision that came from muscle memory built over thousands of hours. Not just here, in this shop, but before. Always before. The calluses on his palms had stories embedded in them, stories he never told, stories nobody ever asked about. "Cole! Cole!" The voice cut through the mechanical symphony of the shop like a knife through silk. Sharp, cold, utterly without warmth. Ethan didn't flinch. He'd been expecting this. He straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a rag that had once been red, but was now a mottled gray-brown, stained by 100 different fluids from 100 different engines. His coveralls bore the name Ethan, stitched in fading blue thread over the left breast pocket, right above a small tear he'd been meaning to fix for 3 weeks. Marissa Hale stood at the entrance to the service bay, silhouetted against the morning light streaming through the industrial door. Even from 30 feet away, Ethan could feel the temperature drop. She was 42, sharp-featured, with dark hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent expression of displeasure. Her suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, probably cost more than Ethan made in 2 months. She held a tablet in one hand like a weapon, screen glowing with whatever data she'd weaponized for this moment. Behind her, 2 men in similar corporate attire flanked her like sentries. One was Davis, the regional operations manager, a man whose entire personality could be summed up as ambitious sycophant. The other was someone Ethan didn't recognize, probably from corporate headquarters, here to witness whatever execution Marissa had planned. "Mr. Cole," she said, her heels clicking against the concrete as she approached. Each step was measured, deliberate, designed to command attention. "We need to talk, now." Around them, the shop grew quieter. Not silent, engines still ran, air compressors still hissed, someone's radio still played classic rock at low volume, but quieter. The kind of quiet that meant everyone was listening while pretending not to. Ethan's coworkers, men he'd worked beside for 8 months, suddenly found their own tasks absolutely fascinating. Tommy, a kid fresh out of tech school, actually ducked behind a Chevy Tahoe. Miguel, normally friendly, studied a tire pressure gauge like it contained the secrets of the universe. Even Rick, the shop foreman who'd hired Ethan, suddenly discovered something critically important about his clipboard. Nobody wanted to be near whatever was about to happen. Ethan set down the fuel injector he'd been holding. "Ms. Hale," he acknowledged, his voice even, unremarkable. The voice of a man who'd learned long ago that the less you said, the less could be used against you. "I've been reviewing the service reports from last week," Marissa began, not bothering with pleasantries or privacy. Her voice carried across the shop, and Ethan knew that was intentional. Everything with Marissa Hale was intentional. Specifically, the 2021 Audi A6 that came in with the electrical fault. Ethan remembered the car, remembered the problem, remembered the solution. "Yes, ma'am." "The customer complained that their diagnostic port was damaged. Upon investigation, we discovered you bypassed standard protocol." She tapped her tablet, the gesture sharp and accusatory. "You accessed the vehicle's computer system through an alternative entry point, a method not outlined in our service manual, a method not authorized by this company." A bead of sweat rolled down Ethan's temple, but it had nothing to do with guilt. The shop was always hot. The bay door was open, but September in Texas meant the heat followed you everywhere, relentless and inescapable. The diagnostic port was physically damaged, Ethan explained, keeping his voice steady. Cracked housing, broken pins. The customer needed their car that day, had a medical appointment they couldn't miss. The alternative access point is a manufacturer-approved backup method. It's in the vehicle's technical service bulletin, TSB 47. I don't care about technical bulletins, Marissa cut him off, her voice rising just enough to ensure everyone heard. I care about procedure. I care about protocol. I care about mechanics who think they're smarter than the systems we have in place. Ethan said nothing. His jaw tightened imperceptibly. Davis, the operations manager, stepped forward with a folder. He handed it to Marissa with the eagerness of a dog presenting a retrieved stick. She opened it, made a show of reviewing its contents, though Ethan suspected she'd memorized every word before walking in here. This isn't the first incident, she continued. 2 weeks ago, you modified a repair sequence on a transmission service. Last month, you questioned a parts supplier's recommendation in front of a customer. You consistently deviate from established guidelines. I fixed the problems, Ethan said quietly. Every customer left satisfied. Every vehicle left safe. That's not the point. The words cracked across the shop like a whip. Several mechanics actually jumped. Marissa took 3 steps closer, close enough that Ethan could smell her perfume. Something expensive and floral that seemed wildly out of place among the motor oil and metal. The point, Mr. Cole, is that you don't get to freelance. You don't get to improvise. We have procedures for a reason. We have protocols because this company serves thousands of customers, and we can't have cowboys like you making up the rules as you go. Cowboys. The word hung in the air, and Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, something older. Something that recognized the irony in ways Marissa Hale would never understand. I understand, he said, because there was nothing else to say. Do you? Marissa's eyes narrowed. Because your employment file suggests otherwise. 8 months here, Cole. 8 months of consistently acceptable work, marred by this persistent need to do things your way instead of the right way. Behind her, the unidentified corporate representative was taking notes on his own tablet. Recording this, documenting it, building a case that had probably already been decided. Tommy, the young mechanic, had emerged from behind the Tahoe, watching with wide eyes. He was 22, reminded Ethan of some of the younger pilots he'd trained once, a lifetime ago. Good kid, nervous, still believed that hard work and skill mattered more than politics. He'd learn. I've made a decision, Marissa announced, loud enough for the entire shop to hear. This was a performance now, a demonstration, a message to everyone wearing coveralls and carrying wrenches. This is what happens when you don't follow the rules. Effective immediately, your employment with Hale Automotive Solutions is terminated. The words landed like physical blows, even though Ethan had known they were coming, had felt them approaching for weeks like a storm on the horizon. You'll receive 2 weeks severance as per your contract, minus the cost of that damaged diagnostic port, which will be deducted from your final check. Please surrender your company credentials and clear out your locker within the hour. Somewhere in the shop, someone dropped a wrench. It clattered against concrete, impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Ethan stood there, grease under his fingernails, motor oil staining his coveralls, and felt the weight of everything pressing down. Not anger, not indignation, just a heavy, suffocating awareness of reality. He needed this job. Lily needed this job. His daughter's asthma medication cost $340 a month without insurance. The pediatric pulmonologist visits were another $200 every 6 weeks. The nebulizer treatments, the emergency inhaler refills, the monitoring equipment, it all added up to a mountain of expenses that his savings account couldn't climb. He'd been planning, budgeting, counting days until his probationary period ended and insurance kicked in. 3 more weeks. Just 3 more weeks and Lily would have been covered. Now she had nothing. Now he had nothing. I understand, Ethan said again, and his voice didn't shake. Years of discipline, of training, of situations far more stressful than this ensured his voice remained steady. I'll clear out my things. Marissa nodded, satisfied. This was the response she'd wanted. Compliance. Submission. An example made without resistance. See that you do. Davis will escort you to ensure company property is returned. She turned on her heel, her corporate entourage following like pilot fish trailing a shark. The unnamed representative was still typing on his tablet, probably documenting the smooth execution of a termination. Clean, professional, by the book. As they walked away, Ethan heard Marissa's voice, not quite as quiet as she probably intended. This is what happens when we lower our standards. Mechanics like that think experience trumps procedure. They're a liability. The bay door closed behind them with a heavy metallic thud. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Miguel crossed himself, muttering something in Spanish that sounded like a prayer or maybe a curse. Rick studied his clipboard with renewed intensity, his jaw working like he was chewing words he couldn't say. Tommy approached slowly, his young face twisted with confusion and anger. Mr. Cole, that's bullshit. You're the best mechanic here. You taught me half of what I know. That Audi fix was genius. You saved that customer's whole day. Ethan managed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Appreciate that, Tommy, but she's the boss. She makes the calls. But you didn't do anything wrong. Didn't do anything right either, according to the manual. Ethan clapped the kid on the shoulder. Listen to me. Learn the lesson I didn't. In this world, being good at your job ain't always enough. You gotta be good at politics too. You gotta know when to keep your head down. That's not fair. No, Ethan agreed, heading toward his locker in the break room. It's not. Davis waited by the door, arms crossed, expression neutral. He was just doing his job too, Ethan supposed, following orders, enforcing policy, being a good little soldier for Marissa Hale. The break room was small, cramped, with lockers lining one wall and a table that wobbled no matter which leg you tried to stabilize. Someone had left half a donut on a paper plate. The coffee maker burbled, producing something that technically qualified as coffee only in the loosest definitional sense. Ethan spun the combination lock on his locker, 17, 32, 8. Lily's birthday. He pulled out his personal tools first, the small set in the worn leather case, tools that had traveled with him from San Diego to Norfolk to Jacksonville, and finally here, to this civilian life he'd built from scratch. His Navy-issue multi-tool, technically government property he'd never returned. A small framed photo of Lily, taken last year at the park, her smile wide despite the oxygen tube visible at the edges of the frame. A spare jacket. A book on advanced automotive electronics he'd been reading during lunch breaks. Not much to show for 8 months of work. Davis watched with the enthusiasm of a man timing a parking meter. Need to check the tools, he said, not unkindly. Just procedure. Always procedure. Ethan opened the case. Inside, each tool sat in its designated slot, clean and organized. The wrenches were metric and SAE, the sockets ranging from 6mm to 24mm, the precision drivers arranged by size. Everything had its place. Everything served its purpose, just like in the military, just like in the cockpit, where chaos meant death and organization meant everyone came home. Davis glanced over the tools, clearly having no idea what he was looking at. Those yours? All mine. Bought with my own money. Want to see receipts? No, that's fine. Davis shifted uncomfortably. Look, Cole, for what it's worth, I think you're a solid mechanic. This whole thing is politics, Ethan finished. Yeah, I know. He closed the locker, spun the lock one final time out of habit, and picked up the cardboard box where he'd placed his belongings. It wasn't even full. The entire physical evidence of 8 months of his life fit in a box that once held printer paper. As they walked back through the shop, Ethan's former coworkers maintained their studied disinterest. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody said goodbye. Self-preservation was a powerful thing. If they acknowledged him, they acknowledged it could happen to them. Only Tommy broke ranks, stepping forward with his hand extended. Good luck, Mr. Cole. I hope things work out for you. Ethan shook his hand, feeling the kid's nervousness in his grip. You too, Tommy. Keep learning. Keep asking questions. Just maybe pick your battles. Outside, the Texas sun hit Ethan like a hammer. It was barely 8:30 a.m. and already pushing 90 degrees. His truck sat in the employee lot. a 2004 Ford F-150 with 187,000 miles on the odometer, a dent in the rear quarter panel, and a passenger window that only rolled down 3/4 of the way. But it was paid off. And it ran. And right now, those were the only things that mattered. He set the box on the passenger seat, closed the door carefully, the handle was temperamental, and stood for a moment in the parking lot, looking back at the building that had just ejected him from its system like a contaminated fuel filter. Hale Automotive Solutions. The sign was new, sleek, corporate. Marissa had replaced the old one 3 months ago, part of her rebranding initiative. Everything had to look professional. Everything had to project success. Never mind the people inside barely making rent. Ethan pulled out his phone, an old model, screen cracked in the upper right corner from when Lily had dropped it chasing the neighbor's cat. He had 3 text messages. The first was from the pharmacy. Prescription ready for pickup. Total, $340 children. The second was from Lily's school. Reminder, field trip permission slip and $15 due Friday. The third was from his landlord. Rent due in 5 days. Please confirm you'll be paying on time this month. He stared at the messages, feeling the mathematics of his life rearrange themselves into an equation that no longer balanced. Severance pay, minus the diagnostic port deduction Marissa had mentioned, would be maybe $1,200. Enough to cover rent, not enough for medication, definitely not enough for both, plus food, plus utilities, plus everything else. He could stretch it, cut corners, skip meals. He'd done more with less before. But Lily couldn't skip her medication. Lily needed to breathe. His thumb hovered over the call button next to her school's contact. He should pick her up early, explain the situation, figure out their next move together. She was 9, old enough to understand when things got tight, old enough to see the worry in his eyes no matter how hard he tried to hide it. But she was also 9, young enough to still believe her dad could fix anything, young enough to not need the weight of adult problems crushing her childhood. He'd figure it out. He always figured it out, had to. The phone buzzed in his hand. Unknown number. Normally, he'd let it go to voicemail, probably spam, probably someone trying to sell him an extended car warranty on a vehicle old enough to vote. But something made him answer. This is Ethan. Mr. Cole? A woman's voice, professional, efficient. This is Jennifer from Bright Future Pediatrics. I'm calling about Lily's appointment next week. We've had a cancellation and can move her up to tomorrow at 2 p.m. if that works for your schedule. Tomorrow, when he'd normally be at work, when he'd have to request time off, get approval from Rick, make up the hours later in the week. Except he didn't have work anymore, didn't have hours to make up, didn't have insurance to cover the appointment. Mr. Cole, are you there? Yeah, he managed. Yeah, I'm here. Listen, I might need to reschedule. Can I call you back? Of course. Just let us know by end of business today if you want that earlier slot. She hung up, leaving Ethan standing in a parking lot, holding a phone and a box of possessions, with the sun beating down and the future looking like a storm he couldn't outrun. He got in the truck, started the engine, it coughed twice before catching, needed new spark plugs, and sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. In the rearview mirror, he could see his own eyes. Brown, unremarkable, with crow's feet at the corners from years of squinting into sun and wind. The face of a mechanic. A single dad. A guy struggling to keep his head above water. Nobody looked at that face and saw anything else. Nobody asked about the scars on his knuckles that didn't come from wrenches. Nobody noticed the way he could estimate distances and angles without thinking, or how he could hear an engine problem 3 bays away, or the military precision in how he organized his tools. Nobody bothered to look deeper than the grease stains, and that was fine. That was safer. That was exactly how Ethan had designed his life after everything changed, after Lily was born, after he made the hardest choice he'd ever made and walked away from the only career he'd ever loved. The past needed to stay in the past. The present was complicated enough. He pulled out of the parking lot, the truck's alignment slightly off, needed new tie rods, another thing on the list of repairs he'd get to eventually, and merged into morning traffic. His phone sat in the cup holder, screen dark, holding messages he couldn't afford to answer and questions he couldn't afford to ask. Behind him, Hale Automotive Solutions grew smaller in the mirror. Ahead, somewhere in this city, Lily was in class, learning about fractions or state capitals or something else that belonged to the simple world of elementary school, unaware that her father's carefully constructed safety net had just been cut. Ethan drove toward home, toward the small two-bedroom apartment they'd lived in for the past year, toward the stack of bills on the kitchen counter and the medication bottles in the cabinet and all the small, accumulating details of a life lived paycheck to paycheck. He'd figure it out. He always figured it out. The alternative was unthinkable. The apartment was quiet when Ethan unlocked the door, the kind of silence that felt heavy rather than peaceful. He set the cardboard box on the kitchen counter next to a stack of mail he'd been avoiding, mostly bills, a few flyers for pizza places he couldn't afford, and something from the IRS that he'd deal with later, because dealing with it now would require energy he didn't have. The kitchen was small, barely room for two people to stand comfortably. The linoleum was peeling near the refrigerator, a problem the landlord kept promising to fix. The cabinets were the kind of builder-grade wood laminate that looked decent from 10 feet away but showed every scratch and dent up close. On the refrigerator, held by magnets shaped like fruit, were Lily's drawings: a rainbow, a cat that might also be a dog, a house with a family of stick figures standing in front. In the last drawing, the tallest stick figure had arms raised up high. When Ethan had asked her about it, Lily had explained matter-of-factly that it was him fixing a helicopter. "You don't fix helicopters anymore, Daddy," she'd said. "You fix cars now." "That's right, sweetheart. But you used to fly them, right? Before I was born?" "Long time ago." She'd studied the drawing with the seriousness only a 9-year-old could muster. "I think helicopters are cooler than cars." He'd smiled, ruffled her hair. "Cars are pretty cool too." Now, standing in the empty apartment, Ethan looked at that drawing and felt something twist in his chest. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. 10:15 a.m. Lily's class had music until 10:45, then math. She loved music, tolerated math. Mrs. Patterson, her teacher, had mentioned at the last parent conference that Lily was bright, engaged, but sometimes seemed tired. The asthma, Ethan had explained. The medications made her drowsy sometimes. Mrs. Patterson had nodded sympathetically, made a note in her file, and moved on to discussing Lily's excellent progress in reading. She hadn't asked about insurance or medication costs or whether Ethan was struggling. That wasn't her job. Her job was teaching multiplication tables and spelling words, and she did it well. Everything else was Ethan's problem. He moved to the cabinet above the sink and pulled down the medication bottles. 5 different prescriptions, each with their own schedule, their own dosages, their own costs. The albuterol inhaler for emergency breathing treatments, the fluticasone for daily prevention, the Montelukast tablets she took every night, the prednisone they kept on hand for severe flare-ups, the antibiotic she'd needed last month when a chest cold had threatened to become pneumonia. The empty bottles he kept meaning to recycle sat in a plastic bag under the sink, a growing collection of pharmaceutical evidence documenting every month of her 9 years. She'd been born 6 weeks early, lungs underdeveloped, and spent her first 3 weeks in the NICU, hooked to machines that breathed for her. Sarah, Lily's mother, had lasted 2 months after that before deciding that motherhood and medical bills and a boyfriend who'd just left the Navy wasn't the life she'd signed up for. Ethan had come home from a job interview, his first attempt at civilian employment, a maintenance position at a shipping company that paid terribly, to find a note on the kitchen table and Sarah's key next to it. The note had been short, apologetic, final. He'd read it 3 times, standing in that different apartment in that different city, with infant Lily sleeping in her bassinet, oxygen monitor beeping softly, and felt his entire world reconfigure around a single truth. He was alone, and this tiny human depending on him for everything was all that mattered. The Navy had trained him for crisis situations, for emergency landings and mechanical failures and moments when everything went wrong, and you had 30 seconds to make decisions that determined who lived and who died. Nobody had trained him to be a single father to a medically fragile infant. He'd figured it out anyway. Now, 7 years later, standing in another kitchen, in another city with another job lost, he was still figuring it out. His phone buzzed, text message from a number he didn't recognize. Hey man, it's Tommy from the shop. Just wanted to say that was messed up what happened. You got a raw deal. If you need a reference or anything, I'll vouch for you. Ethan typed back. Thanks, Tommy. Appreciate it. A moment later, Marissa called a meeting after you left. Whole big speech about following procedure. Everyone's pretty pissed, but nobody's saying anything. This place sucks without you. Ethan didn't respond to that. What was there to say? The kid needed the job as much as Ethan had. Maybe more. Tommy had mentioned student loans, a girlfriend, plans to get married next year. He couldn't afford to make waves. Another buzz. Different number, also unknown. Mr. Cole, this is Dr. Rahman's office calling about Lily's prescription refills. Your insurance information on file has been declined. Please call us back to update your coverage. Of course it had been declined. His insurance had been through Hale Automotive, and Marissa had terminated him effective immediately, which meant his coverage had been cut off the moment he walked out the door. He sat down at the small kitchen table, the chair creaking under his weight, and pulled out the stack of bills. Time to do math he already knew would hurt. Rent, $1,100 due in 5 days. Electricity, $87 due in 2 weeks. Water trash, $45 due in 2 weeks. Internet, $60 due next month. Phone, $75 due in 10 days. Car insurance, $140 due in 3 days. Lily's medication without insurance, $340 immediately, another $280 in refills due in 2 weeks. Groceries, roughly $400 a month if he was careful, which meant $100 a week, which meant he needed to shop in the next day or two. He added it up 3 times, hoping the numbers would magically change. They didn't. Total immediate needs, roughly $2,200. Expected severance after deductions, maybe $1,200. Savings account balance, $347. The equation didn't work. No matter how he rearranged the variables, no matter which bills he prioritized or delayed, the math refused to balance. He could skip the car insurance, but if he got pulled over driving uninsured, the ticket would cost more than the premium. He could delay the electricity, but they'd shut it off, and Lily's nebulizer needed power. He could stretch the groceries, eat less himself, but Lily needed proper nutrition. The only truly flexible variable was the medication, and that wasn't flexible at all. His phone rang. Actual call this time, not a text. Number he recognized. Jackie, his neighbor from across the hall. Hey, Ethan, hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. What's up? I'm running to the store and wondered if you needed anything. I know Lily likes those yogurt cups with the strawberries. Jackie was 63, retired, lived alone with a cat named Senator. She'd appointed herself the building's unofficial grandmother, looking out for everyone, especially Lily. Once a week, she'd knock on the door with cookies she'd accidentally baked too many of, or casserole she'd made too much of and couldn't possibly finish alone. Ethan knew charity when he saw it. He also knew pride was expensive. We're good, Jackie. Thank you, though. You sure? It's no trouble. I'm sure. Pause on the line. Ethan, is everything all right? I saw you come home early. You're usually at work until... Everything's fine, he interrupted, keeping his voice light. Just had some schedule changes. I appreciate you checking. Another pause, longer this time. Jackie wasn't stupid. Well, you know where I am if you need anything. I do. Thanks, Jackie. He hung up before she could probe deeper. Good people were the hardest to lie to. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, walls closing in. Ethan stood, paced to the window, looked out at the parking lot below. His truck sat in its assigned space, listing slightly to the left because the suspension was shot. Across the lot, a couple was loading suitcases into a newer Honda, probably heading somewhere for vacation. Normal people doing normal things with normal problems. He pressed his forehead against the glass, felt the heat of the day radiating through. September in Texas meant the air conditioning ran constantly, which meant higher electric bills, which meant another expense he couldn't afford. His reflection stared back at him from the window. 35 years old, face weathered beyond his years, hair that needed cutting, shoulders that carried weight invisible to everyone else. Once, a lifetime ago, those shoulders had carried the responsibility of a crew. Co-pilot, crew chief, rescue swimmers, people who trusted him to bring them home. He'd flown search and rescue missions off the coast of California, medical evacuations in the Gulf, training exercises that simulated every nightmare scenario the Navy could imagine. He'd been good at it, better than good. His commanding officer had said Ethan had instincts you couldn't teach, a feel for the aircraft that bordered on supernatural. You don't fly the helicopter, Cole, the CO had said once. You think it and the bird just does it. That was before Lily, before the NICU and the medical bills and the crushing realization that his military salary, which had seemed adequate when he was single, became laughably insufficient when facing pediatric intensive care costs. The Navy had offered extensions, promotions, paths forward. But those paths meant deployments, meant months away, meant trusting someone else to watch the monitors when Lily stopped breathing in the middle of the night. So he'd made a choice. Left the service. Traded the cockpit for civilian life. Became a mechanic because engines were engines, whether they powered helicopters or cars, and at least fixing cars meant he could be home every night. Nobody at Hale Automotive had known. He'd left that part of himself off the resume, mentioned only the mechanical training, not the flight hours. Easier that way. Cleaner. Civilians heard military and made assumptions, asked questions, thanked him for his service in ways that always felt hollow. Better to just be Ethan the mechanic. Ethan, the single dad. Ethan who kept his head down and his past quiet. His phone buzzed again. Email this time, from a job search website he'd signed up for months ago, back when things at Hale were first starting to feel unstable. New opportunities matching your search. Automotive technician positions in your area. He opened it. 3 listings. One required ASE certification he'd let lapse. Another was 40 miles away, too far to be home if Lily had an emergency. The third paid $12 an hour, which was minimum wage with a toolbox, barely enough to cover rent, let alone everything else. He bookmarked all 3 anyway. Beggars and choosers. The apartment was too quiet. Ethan turned on the TV, not to watch anything, just to fill the silence with noise. Some talk show was discussing celebrity gossip, people with problems that seemed absurd from where he stood. He opened his laptop, an old Dell that took 3 minutes to boot up, and logged into his bank account. The numbers were the same as this morning, same as yesterday. Money didn't magically appear just because you needed it to. He navigated to the job board, started updating his resume. Under skills, he listed diagnostic expertise, electrical systems, engine repair, customer service. All true, all incomplete. Under experience, he put his 8 months at Hale Automotive. Before that, 11 months at a Jiffy Lube. Before that, 9 months at an independent shop in Oklahoma City. He didn't put the 6 years flying helicopters, didn't mention the commendations, didn't include the classified rescue mission that had earned him a medal he kept in a box under his bed because Lily found it once and asked too many questions he didn't know how to answer. That version of himself didn't exist on paper, only in memory, only in the muscle memory of his hands, which still sometimes twitched during thunderstorms like they were reaching for controls that weren't there. At 11:30, his phone rang again. School. His heart immediately kicked into overdrive. Mr. Cole, this is Nurse Stevens at Meadowbrook Elementary. Is Lily okay? She's fine, the nurse said quickly, and Ethan's heart rate dropped from sprint to jog. She had a minor coughing episode during PE, nothing serious, but I gave her a breathing treatment as a precaution. She's resting in my office now. I can come get her. That's not necessary. She's already feeling better. But I wanted to let you know, and we're running low on a rescue inhaler here at school. The one on file is nearly empty. The rescue inhaler. $90 for the name brand version her doctor prescribed. $60 for generic if the pharmacy had it in stock. I'll bring a new one tomorrow, Ethan said. Perfect. Like I said, she's doing great now. Probably just pushed herself too hard in kickball. They hung up. Ethan sat back, closed his eyes, and felt the familiar weight of parental worry settle over him like a blanket. She was fine. The nurse had said she was fine, but fine was always temporary with Lily. Fine could become not fine in minutes. Fine required constant vigilance, constant medication, constant money. He added rescue inhaler to his mental list of immediate expenses. The list was getting longer than the paycheck that didn't exist anymore. At noon, he made himself a sandwich, peanut butter and jelly, the cheap stuff, and ate it standing at the counter while scrolling through job listings on his phone. Most wanted experience he had, but certifications he didn't. A few offered interviews but listed wages that were somehow worse than what Hale had paid. One listing caught his eye: experienced mechanic needed, small shop, flexible hours, family-friendly environment. He called the number. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. Jerry's Auto. Hi, I'm calling about the mechanic position. You got ASE certs? Not current, but I have. Can't use you without certs. Insurance won't cover it. Thanks anyway. Click. Ethan stared at the phone. 15 seconds. That's how long it took for that door to close. He tried 2 more numbers. One went to voicemail. The other told him they'd already filled the position but would keep his information on file, which was polite code for "don't call us." By 2:00 p.m., he'd applied to 7 jobs, received 3 automated rejection emails, and developed a headache that pulsed behind his right eye. He took 2 aspirin, generic brand, bottle of 500 for $8, one of the few medications that didn't require a prescription, and lay down on the couch. The apartment's ceiling had a water stain in the corner from a leak 2 floors up. The landlord had patched it but never repainted, so now there was a yellowish mark roughly the shape of Texas. Ethan stared at it, his mind churning through possibilities. He could ask Jackie for a loan. She'd probably give it to him, but Jackie lived on Social Security and a small pension. She couldn't afford to be his safety net. He could try to sell something. But what? The TV was 8 years old, worth maybe $40. The laptop might get 60. His tools were the only things of real value, and he needed those to work. He could pawn his watch. It was a decent dive watch, given to him by his squadron when he left the service, probably worth $200. But it was also one of the few tangible connections he still had to that life, and selling it felt like severing something he wasn't ready to lose. His phone buzzed. Text from Tommy again. Dude, Marissa just hired some guy from corporate to replace you. Literally already here. Nobody likes him. He doesn't know shit about actual repair work. Ethan didn't respond. What was the point? Another buzz. Different number. This is Capital Collections calling about account number ending in 4782. Please return this call regarding an important matter. He deleted it. The collection agency could get in line behind everyone else. At 2:45, he left to pick up Lily from school. The truck's air conditioning was broken. Had been for 3 months. Another repair on the infinite list. So he drove with the windows down, hot air buffeting through the cab. Meadowbrook Elementary was a sprawling single-story building with murals painted on the outside walls, bright and cheerful in a way that seemed designed to counteract the grim reality that most of the kids here came from families struggling just like Ethan's. He parked in the pickup line, engine idling, and watched the flood of children emerge from the main entrance. 3rd graders mixed with 5th graders, all backpacks and excited chatter, running toward waiting cars with the kind of energy that seemed infinite and impossible. Then he saw her. Lily was smaller than most of her classmates, skinny in the way of children who'd spent too much time sick. Her backpack looked enormous on her narrow frame. Her hair was pulled into a ponytail that had gone slightly lopsided during the day. She walked with her friend Emma, the 2 of them laughing about something. When she spotted the truck, her face lit up, and Ethan felt his chest tighten. She ran over, pulled open the passenger door, and climbed in with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Hey, Daddy! Hey, sweetheart. How was school? Good. We learned about the water cycle in science. Did you know that the water we drink now is the same water dinosaurs drank millions of years ago? I did know that, yeah. That's so cool. She buckled her seatbelt, struggled with the clasp for a moment until it clicked. Oh, and I got an A on my spelling test. Mrs. Patterson put a sticker on it, see? She pulled a paper from her backpack, proudly displaying the gold star sticker next to the big red A+ at the top. That's amazing, Lil. I'm proud of you. It was easy. I studied all the words you helped me with. They pulled out of the parking lot, joining the slow procession of cars leaving the school. Lily chattered about her day, music class, the kickball game at recess, how Michael threw up in the cafeteria, and everyone thought it was gross, but also kind of funny. She didn't mention the coughing episode, didn't mention the nurse's office. At 9 years old, Lily had become an expert at downplaying her own health scares, probably because she'd learned it upset Ethan when she didn't. Nurse Stevens called me, Ethan said carefully. She said you had some trouble breathing during PE. Lily's expression shifted, became more guarded. It was nothing. I just coughed a little. She gave you a treatment. Yeah, but I felt better after. I'm fine now. See? She took an exaggerated deep breath, let it out slowly. Totally fine. I know you're fine, sweetheart, but we need to be careful, okay? If you start feeling tight in your chest, you tell your teacher right away. I know, Daddy. I always do. They drove in silence for a moment. The radio was on low, some classic rock station playing a song Ethan half remembered from high school. Are you home early because you're sick? Lily asked suddenly. What? No, I'm not sick. Then why aren't you at work? Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. I had some schedule changes, Ethan said, which was technically true. His schedule had definitely changed. Might be home a bit more for a while. Like a vacation? Something like that. Lily considered this. Can we go to the Science Museum? Emma went last week and said they have a new dinosaur exhibit. The Science Museum. $20 admission per person, plus parking, plus she'd inevitably want something from the gift shop. Maybe in a couple weeks, Ethan said. Let me check our schedule. Okay. She didn't sound disappointed, just accepting. She'd learned early that maybe later usually meant probably not, but she'd also learned not to push. They stopped at a red light. An ambulance screamed past, lights flashing, and Lily watched it go with wide eyes. Do you miss flying? She asked. The question came out of nowhere, hitting Ethan sideways. Sometimes, he admitted. Was it fun? It was intense. But yeah, sometimes it was fun. Why did you stop? Because you couldn't breathe, and I couldn't be 30,000 feet away when you needed me. Because being your dad is more important, he said instead. She smiled at that, satisfied with the answer. I'm glad you're my dad. I'm glad you're my daughter. They pulled into the apartment complex, parked in their designated spot. Lily grabbed her backpack and Ethan grabbed the empty cardboard box from the passenger side. He'd forgotten to take it inside earlier. Jackie was standing in the hallway when they reached their floor, presumably having just gotten her mail. She brightened when she saw Lily. Well, hello there, Miss Lily. How was school? Good. I got an A on my spelling test. An A! Well, aren't you smart? You know, I just baked some cookies, chocolate chip. I think I made way too many. Would you help me eat them? Lily looked up at Ethan with hopeful eyes. He wanted to say no, wanted to maintain some shred of independence, but Lily looked so excited and Jackie looked so genuinely pleased to share, and pride was expensive. Maybe just one or two, Ethan said. Wonderful. Come on over in about 10 minutes. I'll have them plated up nice. Inside the apartment, Lily dropped her backpack by the couch and went immediately to her room to change out of her school clothes. Ethan could hear her humming, the sound muffled through the thin walls. He stood in the kitchen, looking at the box of his possessions from Hale Automotive, at the stack of bills, at the medication bottles lined up like soldiers, and felt the weight of the day settle fully onto his shoulders. 10 minutes later, they went to Jackie's apartment. It smelled like vanilla and chocolate, warm and welcoming. Senator the cat wound around Lily's legs, purring. Jackie had indeed made cookies, dozens of them, cooling on wire racks on every available surface. I got a little carried away, she admitted with a laugh. They sat at her small dining table, Lily eating cookies and telling Jackie about the water cycle, and for a few minutes, Ethan let himself pretend everything was normal. So, Jackie said casually, refilling Ethan's coffee cup, those schedule changes at work. Anything I should know about? Ethan met her eyes. She was watching him with the expression of someone who'd raised 3 kids and buried a husband and survived more than Ethan would probably ever know. She saw things. Just some transitions, he said carefully. Nothing to worry about. She didn't believe him, but didn't push. Well, you know I'm here if you need anything. I mean that, Ethan. Anything. I appreciate that, Jackie. Lily was on her 3rd cookie, chocolate smeared on her chin, playing with Senator and completely oblivious to the adult conversation happening over her head. When they left 20 minutes later, Ethan carried a plate stacked with at least a dozen cookies wrapped in foil. For later, Jackie had insisted, growing girl needs her snacks. Back in their apartment, Lily did homework at the kitchen table while Ethan started dinner. Spaghetti, because it was cheap and filling, and Lily actually liked it. He boiled water, browned ground beef he'd bought on sale last week, opened a jar of sauce that cost $2. While the pasta cooked, he checked his email on his phone. 2 more automated rejections. 1 request for an interview at a shop 30 miles away that paid $13 an hour. He replied to the interview request. Beggars and choosers. Daddy, what's 7 times 8? Lily called from the table. What do you think it is? 56? That's right. See, you know it. She bent back over her homework, tongue poking out slightly in concentration. They ate dinner together at the small table, Lily telling him more about school, about Emma's birthday party next month, about how they were starting a unit on the solar system, and maybe Ethan could help her make a model. We can do that, he said, already calculating the cost of styrofoam balls and paint. After dinner, Lily's evening routine unfolded with practiced precision. Medication first. The Montelukast tablet with a full glass of water. The fluticasone puffs with the spacer to make sure it reached her lungs. She hated the taste, made a face every time, but never complained. Then bath, pajamas, teeth brushing, and finally bed. Ethan read to her from the book they'd been working through, a fantasy novel about a girl who could talk to animals. Lily's eyes grew heavy halfway through the chapter. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? Are we okay? Like, with money and stuff? His heart clenched. Why would you ask that? I heard you on the phone earlier. You sounded worried. 9 years old and too perceptive by half. We're okay, Ethan said, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. I promise. You don't need to worry about grown-up stuff. But if we're not okay, you'd tell me, right? Right, he lied. But we're fine. Now get some sleep. You've got school tomorrow. She nodded, already drifting off. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into the deep rhythm of sleep. Ethan sat there for a long moment, watching her chest rise and fall, listening for any hitch or wheeze that might signal trouble. She looked peaceful, small and fragile and perfect. He pressed a kiss to her forehead and left the room, pulling the door mostly closed but leaving it cracked open so he could hear if she needed anything during the night. In the living room, he collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion hitting him like a physical force. The TV was still on, muted, showing some late-night news program. His phone buzzed. Email. He almost didn't check it, but something made him look. Subject line. Job application status update. Declined. He closed his eyes, leaned his head back against the couch, and tried to remember the last time something had gone right. Tomorrow he'd try again. Apply to more jobs. Make more calls. Figure out the medication situation, the rent situation, all of it. Tonight, he was just tired. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. Somewhere in the building, someone was playing music, bass thumping through the walls. Ethan's hands, stained with grease that never quite washed completely out, rested on his knees. Working hands, capable hands, hands that had once controlled a multi-million-dollar aircraft, that had pulled people from stormy seas, that now changed oil and replaced brake pads and held his daughter when she couldn't breathe. Nobody saw those hands and knew their history. Nobody looked at Ethan Cole and saw anything except what he showed them. A mechanic, a single dad, a guy just trying to get by. And that was fine. That was safer. That was the life he'd chosen. Even if tonight, sitting alone in a quiet apartment with unpaid bills and an uncertain future, it felt like maybe he'd chosen wrong. The next morning arrived too quickly, sunlight cutting through the cheap blinds and stripes across Ethan's face. He'd slept on the couch, hadn't even made it to his bedroom, and his back complained about it with sharp insistence. The clock on the wall read 6:23 a.m. Old habits died hard. His body still woke him at mechanic hours, even though he had nowhere to be. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, mentally running through the day's necessities. Lily's medication, the pharmacy. Money he didn't have for prescriptions he couldn't skip. From down the hall came the sound of Lily's alarm, a cheerful beeping that she'd sleep through for another 5 minutes if he didn't intervene. Ethan pushed himself up, joints protesting, and made his way to her room. She was a small lump under her comforter, one arm flung over her head. He sat on the edge of her bed, gently shook her shoulder. "Time to wake up, sweetheart." She groaned, burrowed deeper into the blankets. 5 more minutes. "That's what you said 5 minutes ago in your sleep. Come on, school day." Another groan, but she sat up, hair sticking up in every direction. Her breathing sounded clear, no wheezing, and Ethan felt the perpetual knot of worry in his chest loosen slightly. They moved through the morning routine with practiced efficiency. Lily got dressed while Ethan made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, orange juice from concentrate. She took her morning medication without complaint, though she still made a face at the inhaler. "I know," Ethan said sympathetically. "Tastes terrible." "Tastes like plastic and sadness," Lily declared, which made him laugh despite everything. "Where'd you learn that phrase?" "Emma says her mom's cooking tastes like disappointment and regret." "Well, Emma's mom probably doesn't appreciate that description." Lily grinned, shoveling eggs into her mouth. She had school spirit day today, wear your favorite color, and had chosen a purple shirt with a sparkly unicorn on it. The shirt was slightly too small, purchased 6 months ago before a growth spurt, but she loved it, and Ethan wasn't about to tell her she was outgrowing it when he couldn't afford to replace it yet. At 7:40, they were in the truck heading to school. The morning traffic was its usual nightmare, everyone trying to get somewhere, important people with important jobs and presumably money in their bank accounts. "You're quiet," Lily observed, looking at him with those too perceptive eyes. "Just thinking." "About what?" "Boring adult stuff, nothing interesting." "Is it about work?" He glanced at her. "Why would you think that?" "Because you're home when you're usually at work, and you look worried, and yesterday you said you had schedule changes, but you didn't really explain what that meant." 9 years old, going on 30. "I'm between jobs right now," Ethan said, because lying to her felt wrong, and she clearly already knew something was up. "But it's going to be fine. I've got some interviews lined up." "Is that why we can't go to the science museum?" "That's part of it, yeah." She was quiet for a moment, processing. "I don't need to go to the museum. It's okay." "I know you don't need to, but you deserve fun things too." "We have fun things, like last week when we watched that movie and made popcorn." The movie had been from the library, free. The popcorn had cost $3. She was trying to make him feel better, and it was breaking his heart. "You're a good kid, Lil." "I know," she said with complete sincerity, and despite everything, Ethan smiled. He dropped her at school, watched her run toward the entrance where Emma was waiting, the two of them immediately absorbed in animated conversation. She didn't look back, and that was good. That was normal. Kids shouldn't have to worry about their parents. The drive home took 15 minutes. Ethan spent it mentally calculating and recalculating numbers that refused to add up correctly. By the time he pulled into the apartment parking lot, he'd accepted what he had to do. Inside, he dug through his dresser drawer until he found the watch. It was a Citizen ProMaster, given to him by his squadron commander during a ceremony he could still picture clearly. Everyone in dress whites, the California sun beating down, handshakes and congratulations that felt earned. The watch was heavy, solid, water-resistant to 200 meters. The inscription on the back read, "To Petty Officer Cole, fair winds and following seas, VR 57. He held it for a long moment, feeling the weight of it, the weight of what it represented. Then he put it in his pocket. The pawn shop was on the east side, wedged between a payday loan place and a store that sold discount furniture. Ethan had driven past it 100 times, never imagining he'd actually walk through the door. Inside, it smelled like old electronics and desperation. The walls were lined with guitars, power tools, jewelry cases filled with rings that represented broken promises or broken marriages. A man behind the counter looked up as Ethan entered, 50s, heavy-set, expression that suggested he'd heard every sob story ever invented. "Help you?" Ethan pulled out the watch, set it on the counter. "Looking to pawn this." The man picked it up, examined it with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen thousands of items just like it. He checked the inscription, tested the clasp, held it up to the light. Citizen ProMaster, good watch, holds value. He set it down. I can give you $150 for it. It's worth at least $400. Retail, maybe. This is a pawn shop, not a retail store. $150 is my offer. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. $200. The man studied him, seeing the desperation that Ethan couldn't quite hide. $175, final offer. It wasn't enough. Wasn't nearly enough, but it was something. Fine. The paperwork took 10 minutes. Ethan signed forms, provided his driver's license, accepted the cash, 720s, 35s, and a receipt that explained he had 30 days to reclaim the watch by paying the loan amount plus interest. 30 days. Like he'd have the money in 30 days. Walking out, he felt lighter in one way, heavier in another. The watch was gone, but he had cash. Not enough cash, but more than he'd had an hour ago. The pharmacy was 3 blocks away. Inside, the fluorescent lights were somehow even harsher than the ones at Hale Automotive had been. A young woman at the counter smiled professionally. Picking up? Cole. Lily Cole. She typed on her computer, frowned slightly. Okay, I have 3 prescriptions ready. The total is $340.
Mudeti Isode.
Can I get just the albuterol and the fluticasone today? Hold the Montelukast? More typing. Sure. That brings it to $225. Still more than he had. Just the albuterol then. $93. He handed over 5 20s. The pharmacist counted out his change, $7, and handed him a small white bag with medication that would last maybe 3 weeks if they were careful. 1 prescription. He'd managed to get 1 prescription. Walking back to his truck, Ethan felt the phone buzz in his pocket. Text from an unknown number. This is County Medical Collections. Your account is past due. Please call to arrange payment. He deleted it without responding. Another buzz. Email notification. The interview he'd requested, the shop 30 miles away, had responded. They wanted to see him at 2 o'clock p.m. today. It was 10:47 a.m. now. Plenty of time. He drove home, changed into the cleanest shirt he owned, a plain blue button-down he kept for parent-teacher conferences, and tried to make himself look employable. The face in the mirror looked tired, older than 35, but there wasn't much he could do about that. At 12:30, he got back in the truck and headed toward the interview. The shop was in a part of town he didn't know well, industrial area, lots of warehouses and businesses with chain-link fences. The shop itself was small, 3 bays, paint peeling on the sign that read, Martinez Auto Repair. Inside, a man who had to be Martinez looked up from an engine he was working on. He was maybe 50, weathered, with the permanent stains on his hands that marked a career mechanic. You, Ethan? Yes, sir. I'm Carlos. Come on back to the office. The office was a small room with a desk buried under paperwork, a calendar on the wall from 2023, and a coffee maker that looked like it had survived the Cold War. They sat, Carlos in a creaking desk chair, Ethan in a folding chair that wobbled. So, Carlos said, pulling out a printed copy of Ethan's resume. You've been bouncing around a bit, couple months here, couple months there. Been trying to find the right fit, Ethan said carefully. Your last place was Hale Automotive. Why'd you leave? There it was. The question he'd been dreading. There were some disagreements about repair procedures. Disagreements? Carlos raised an eyebrow. They fire you? Ethan could lie, could spin it, could make it sound mutual or complicated or anything other than what it was. Yes, sir. Carlos leaned back, the chair protesting. Appreciate the honesty. Most guys would dance around that. What kind of disagreements? I used an alternative diagnostic method on a vehicle when the standard port was damaged. Fixed the problem, customer was happy, but it wasn't by the book. Company policy is strict about protocol. Hale's new CEO is a real piece of work from what I hear, all about corporate procedure, not about actual mechanics. Something like that. Carlos studied the resume again. You've got good experience. Know your way around electrical systems, which is something I need. But I gotta be honest with you, Ethan. Position only pays $13 an hour. I can't afford more right now. Business is tight. $13 an hour. Ethan did the math automatically. Full-time, that was about $2,000 a month before taxes. $1,500 after, not enough to cover everything, but better than zero. I can work with that, Ethan said. Hours are 8 to 6, Monday through Saturday. Occasionally need someone on Sunday if we get backed up. You got a problem with that schedule? No, sir. You got reliable childcare? I saw on your application you're a single father. I do. He didn't, but he'd figure it out. He always figured it out. Carlos was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing something. Look, I like you. You're honest, you've got experience, and you don't give me that entitled attitude I get from these young guys fresh out of tech school. But I gotta ask, you gonna be reliable? Because I can't have someone who's gonna bail after 2 months when something better comes along. I'll be reliable, Ethan promised. I need this job, Mr. Martinez. I've got a daughter to support and medical bills to pay. I'm not looking for something better. I'm looking for something stable. Carlos nodded slowly. All right. Tell you what. I'll give you a shot. 2-week trial period. See how you work out. You prove yourself, the job's yours long term. Deal? Deal. Ethan extended his hand and they shook. Can you start Monday? Yes, sir. Good. Come in at 7:30. I'll get you set up with the paperwork and show you around. Dress code is casual, just nothing offensive. You got your own tools? Yes, sir. Perfect. Welcome aboard, Ethan. Walking out of that shop, Ethan felt something almost like relief. It wasn't enough money. The commute was terrible, but it was employment, and right now employment meant hope. He checked his phone. 3:17 p.m. He had time before picking up Lily. He drove to a coffee shop with free Wi-Fi, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, small black coffee, $2, and spent an hour applying to other positions that paid better, just in case. At 2:45, he headed to Meadowbrook Elementary. The pickup line was already forming, parents in minivans and SUVs, some scrolling on phones, some chatting with other parents they'd befriended through the daily routine. Ethan sat in his truck, windows down because the AC didn't work, and waited. That's when he heard it. At first he thought it was a lawnmower or some kind of machinery from a nearby construction site, but the sound was wrong. The rhythm was wrong. The pitch was... His head snapped up. Helicopter. Not just any helicopter. The distinctive thrum of rotor blades. The particular frequency that differentiated military aircraft from civilian. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, muscle memory making his shoulders tense. Other parents were looking up now too, curious, some pointing. The sound was getting louder, closer. And then Ethan saw it. Navy helicopter. SH-60 Seahawk, descending from the east, flying low enough that he could see the markings on the fuselage. His heart rate kicked up, not from fear, but from recognition so deep it was cellular. What the hell was a Navy bird doing here? The helicopter circled once over the school, and several parents were pulling out their phones now, filming. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, the rotor wash making trees bend and sending loose papers flying in the parking lot. Then it descended, landing in the large field adjacent to the school parking lot, the same field where they held the fall festival and 4th grade field day. Teachers were ushering students back inside, probably concerned about safety. Parents were getting out of their cars, watching with a mixture of confusion and excitement. Ethan sat frozen in his truck, watching as the helicopter's rotors began to slow. The side door opened and 2 figures emerged, both in Navy uniforms, one a lieutenant commander based on the rank insignia, the other a petty officer. This wasn't a training exercise. This was intentional. The lieutenant commander scanned the parking lot, and Ethan knew with absolute certainty, what was about to happen. He reached for the door handle, some instinct telling him to either get out or drive away, do something. But before he could move, the lieutenant commander's eyes found him. Recognition. The officer started walking toward the parking lot, toward Ethan's truck, with purposeful strides. The petty officer followed. Parents were staring now, whispers spreading like wildfire. Someone's phone was definitely recording. Ethan got out of the truck slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. He stood there, in his civilian clothes, grease still under his fingernails from this morning, watching 2 Navy personnel approach him like he'd just been transported into a dream that made no sense. The lieutenant commander stopped 3 feet away. He was maybe 40, fit, with the bearing of someone who'd spent 20 years in the service. His eyes showed recognition, but also urgency. Petty Officer Cole? The name hit Ethan like a physical blow. Nobody had called him that in 7 years. "I'm Ethan Cole," he said carefully, not confirming the rank. "Sir, I'm Lieutenant Commander Morrison. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but we have a time-critical situation, and you're the closest asset we have with the necessary expertise." Asset. The word from another life. "I don't know what you think I can help with, but I've been out for 7 years. I'm a civilian, a mechanic. I'm aware of your current status, but your clearance is still active. We checked. And right now we have a pilot down in the Pacific, approximately 240 miles west of San Diego. Weather is deteriorating and we've lost contact. The Rescue Coordination Center has been running scenarios and every model shows the same thing. We need someone who knows how to read the atmospheric data in that specific region, someone who's flown search and rescue in those conditions. Your name came up in the system." Ethan's mind was racing. There are a dozen current pilots who can... They're all deployed or running other missions. You're here. You know the area. Your record shows 17 successful SAR missions in similar conditions. Morrison's expression was grim. "We have maybe a 4-hour window before conditions deteriorate beyond any rescue possibility. We need your help analyzing the data, identifying the most probable drift patterns, and advising the rescue crew. You don't have to fly. Just consult." I have a daughter. She gets out of school and... Ethan checked his watch, realized he'd pawned it, looked at his phone instead. 15 minutes. "We'll make arrangements. We can have someone..." "No." The word came out harder than Ethan intended. "She has medical conditions. She needs her father. I can't just leave." Morrison's expression shifted, became more human. "I understand. I have kids too. But there's a pilot out there, same age as my son, probably scared out of his mind, and he needs someone with your expertise to help bring him home. I'm not ordering you. I can't order you. But I'm asking, please." Around them, the crowd of parents had grown. Someone's phone was definitely pointed at them. This was all being recorded, all being witnessed. Ethan looked at the school building, at the doors where Lily would emerge any minute. Then he looked back at Morrison, at the helicopter sitting in the field, at the choice being offered to him. "How long?" he asked. 2 hours, maybe 3. We have a command vehicle set up at Corpus Christi NAS. You come with us, you look at the data, you give us your assessment, and we'll have you back before dinner." "And my daughter?" Morrison turned to the petty officer. "Davis, coordinate with the school, explain the situation, see if there's someone who can take the daughter home, or we can arrange for a family services rep to..." "Jackie," Ethan said suddenly. "My neighbor. She watches Lily sometimes. If you can contact her, explain what's happening. Give me the information." Ethan rattled off Jackie's number, his apartment number, basic details while his mind struggled to process what was happening. This was insane. He had a new job starting Monday. He had bills to pay. He had a daughter who needed him, but somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, someone else's son needed him more. Morrison's phone was already out, making calls. The efficiency was impressive, the kind of rapid coordination that only happened in the military. Within 5 minutes, they'd reached Jackie. Ethan heard only Morrison's side of the conversation, but apparently Jackie had agreed immediately. Of course she had. "Daddy!" He turned. Lily was standing at the edge of the parking lot with Emma and a teacher, staring at the helicopter, at the uniformed men, at her father, with eyes so wide they seemed to take up half her face. Ethan walked over quickly, knelt down to her level. "Hey, sweetheart, something's come up. Is that a real Navy helicopter?" "Yes." "Are those real Navy people?" "Yes." "Why are they talking to you?" How did he explain this? How did he compress 7 years of hidden history into words a 9-year-old could understand? "A long time ago, before you were born, I used to work with the Navy. I flew helicopters like that one. And right now, they need my help with something important." "You flew helicopters?" Her voice went up an octave. "Like, actually flew them?" "I did." "Why didn't you tell me?" "It's complicated, baby, but right now I need to go with them for a few hours. Jackie's going to pick you up and take you to her place until I get back, okay?" "But I know it's weird. I know you have questions. I promise I'll answer all of them tonight. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She looked at him, at the helicopter, back at him, then she nodded. Okay. That's my girl. He hugged her tight, breathed in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. I love you. I'll be home soon. Love you too, Daddy. Mrs. Patterson, the teacher, had approached. Mr. Cole, the office is coordinating with your neighbor. We'll make sure Lily is safely transferred. Thank you. He stood, took one last look at his daughter standing there looking small and confused, and walked back to Morrison. Let's go. The walk to the helicopter felt surreal, like moving through someone else's life. Parents were filming openly now. Someone was asking questions he couldn't hear over the rotor noise as the pilot fired up the engine in preparation. Ethan climbed into the Seahawk, and the smell hit him immediately. Jet fuel, hydraulic fluid, the particular scent of military aircraft that he'd forgotten he remembered. Morrison handed him a headset, and he put it on, the noise canceling immediately muffling the rotor wash. Ready? Morrison's voice came through the headset. Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. The helicopter lifted, and suddenly they were airborne, rising above the school, above the parking lot full of staring parents, above his truck and his civilian life, and everything he'd built over 7 years. Below he could see Lily, a small figure in purple, still watching. Then they banked west, and she disappeared from view. The flight to Corpus Christi Naval Air Station took 40 minutes. Morrison spent most of it briefing Ethan on the situation. The downed pilot was Lieutenant Jeffrey Hammond, 26 years old, engine failure during a routine patrol. Ejection successful, but now he was in a life raft in increasingly rough seas with a storm system moving in. They had his last known coordinates. They had weather data. They had oceanographic models. What they didn't have was someone who could synthesize all of that into actionable intelligence fast enough. Why me? Ethan asked. Specifically? Your record from 2016, the rescue mission off Point Loma in that freak storm. You found that fishing vessel when everyone else said it was impossible. Command still uses that case study in training. Ethan remembered that mission, remembered the wind shear and the zero visibility, and the moment when he trusted his instincts over the instruments and somehow, impossibly, found the vessel exactly where logic said it shouldn't be. He'd saved 4 lives that day. Maybe today he could save one more. They landed at Corpus Christi NAS and were immediately ushered into a command center, a large room filled with computer monitors, radar displays, and personnel coordinating the rescue operation. The energy was controlled chaos, everyone moving with purpose. An older officer, a commander, approached them. Cole? Yes, sir. Commander Reeves, you have no idea how glad I am to see you. This way. They moved to a large display showing satellite imagery, weather patterns, ocean current data, probability cones for drift patterns. Ethan's eyes scanned the information, his brain automatically processing patterns he hadn't looked at in years. Last known position here, Reeves pointed. Ejection at 13:47 hours. Last radio contact at 14:12. Current time is 15:53. Weather system is tracking northeast at 15 knots, bringing 12-foot swells and deteriorating visibility. Our search grid is here, but it's huge and we're running out of daylight. Ethan studied the data, felt something click in his mind. The ocean currents in this region, he knew them, had flown over them dozens of times. The way the thermoclines interacted with surface currents, the effect of the storm's pressure system on drift patterns. Your search grid is too far north, he said. Reeves frowned. The drift model. Your drift model doesn't account for the subsurface current. There's a cold water upwelling in this region that creates a countercurrent. Surface drift will look like it's going northeast, but anything with significant underwater profile, like a raft, will actually drift southwest. Not much, maybe half a knot, but over 2 hours, that's... He did the calculation in his head. Roughly a mile deviation. Are you sure? I've flown this area more times than I can count. I'm sure. Reeves turned to another officer. Redirect the search pattern. New coordinates. He rattled off numbers while Ethan continued studying the display. There. Ethan pointed to a specific area on the map. If I'm right about the drift, and if he's managing the raft correctly, he should be approximately here. It's sheltered from the worst of the storm system by this underwater ridge, which will create slightly calmer surface conditions. If he's thinking, he'll try to stay in that pocket. Morrison was watching him with something like awe. You got all that from looking at a map for 2 minutes? I got it from flying these patterns for 6 years. Ethan turned to Reeves. But I could be wrong. This is based on conditions I remember from years ago. They could have changed. We'll find out. Redirecting the search birds now. The next 20 minutes were tense. Ethan stood by the display, making minor adjustments to the search coordinates based on updated weather data, explaining his reasoning to the coordination team. It felt like slipping into an old skin, one he'd forgotten fit so well. At 16:17, a voice crackled over the radio. Command, this is Rescue 2. We have visual on a life raft, single occupant, waving. Position matches your updated coordinates. The command center erupted in controlled celebration. Reeves clapped Ethan on the shoulder hard enough to hurt. Son of a bitch, you nailed it. He's safe? Ethan asked. Rescue 2 is moving in for extraction now. Yeah, he's safe, thanks to you. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Someone's son was going home. Someone's brother, someone's friend. Alive. Morrison was grinning. I knew calling you was the right move. Just glad I could help. More than help, Cole. You just saved a pilot's life. Command is going to want to talk to you about... No, Ethan interrupted. I appreciate it, but no. I did what you asked. Now I need to get back to my daughter. Morrison's expression shifted, became understanding. Of course. We'll get you home. The flight back seemed faster, maybe because Ethan's mind was quieter. He'd done something good today. In the chaos of job loss and bills and uncertainty, he'd done one thing that mattered. They landed in the same field next to Meadowbrook Elementary. It was after 5 now, the parking lot empty of the earlier crowd, but Ethan could see a few people still hanging around with phones out. Morrison walked him to the edge of the field. Cole, I meant what I said earlier. Your skills, your instincts, the Navy could use you again. If you ever wanted to come back, I can't, Ethan said simply. I have responsibilities here. I understand. But think about it. You're wasted working in a garage. Morrison handed him a card. My direct line. If you ever change your mind or if you just need anything, call me. Ethan took the card, pocketed it. They shook hands and then Morrison headed back to the helicopter. Ethan walked to his truck, climbed in, and sat for a moment. His phone showed 17 missed calls, 34 text messages. He didn't look at them yet. He drove to Jackie's apartment, knocked on the door. She opened it looking relieved and slightly frazzled. Ethan? Oh, thank heaven. Lily's been worried sick. She wouldn't tell me what was wrong, just kept asking when you'd be back. I'm sorry, I should have called. Nonsense. Those Navy people explained it was important. Something about a rescue? Something like that. Lily appeared behind Jackie, and her face lit up. Daddy! She ran to him, and he caught her, picked her up even though she was getting too big for it. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. I'm here, baby. I'm home. The kids at school saw the video, she said into his shoulder. Everyone's talking about it. About you. What video? Jackie grimaced apologetically. Apparently someone filmed the whole thing. It's on social media, going quite viral from what I understand. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? Here. Jackie pulled out her phone, pulled up Facebook. The video had been shared hundreds of times already. He watched himself talking to Morrison, watched the conversation he couldn't hear over the rotor noise, watched himself climb into the helicopter. The caption read, Breaking. Navy helicopter lands at local elementary school to retrieve former military hero for emergency rescue mission. Sources say mechanic Ethan Cole is actually a decorated pilot who saved a downed aviator today. Full story developing. He stared at the screen, watching his carefully constructed civilian life unravel in real time. Daddy? Lily's voice was small. Why didn't you tell me you were a hero? I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just a guy who used to have a different job. But even as he said it, he could see the question in her eyes, the confusion, the hurt that he'd kept this from her. The phone in his pocket buzzed. Text from Tommy. Dude, you were in the Navy? This is all over the internet. Marissa just saw it. She looks like she's going to puke. Another buzz. Unknown number. Mr. Cole, this is Channel 7 News. We'd love to interview you about today's rescue. Please call us at another. Ethan, it's Carlos from Martinez Auto. Just saw the video going around. Give me a call when you get a chance. The secret was out. The life he'd built. The person he'd been pretending to be. It was all exposed now. Ethan looked at his daughter, at Jackie watching him with new understanding, at the phone buzzing with messages and calls, and a world that suddenly knew who he really was. And he had absolutely no idea what came next. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, watching his life become public property. The video had been shared over 2,000 times now. Local news stations had picked it up. Someone had dug through military records, publicly available ones, and found his service history, his commendations, the outline of missions he'd flown. The comments section was a mix of praise and speculation. This guy is a hero. Why is a decorated pilot working as a mechanic? Someone get this man a proper job. I bet there's a story here. There was definitely a story. Just not one Ethan had ever wanted to tell. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. He'd turned off notifications an hour ago, but could still see the messages piling up. News outlets. Former squadron members he hadn't spoken to in years. People from high school he barely remembered. Everyone suddenly wanted a piece of Ethan Cole's story. He closed the laptop, pressed his palms against his eyes. Tomorrow he'd have to face this. Tonight, he just needed to breathe. In her room, Lily had asked 100 questions before bed. Why did you stop flying? Were you scared? Did you save lots of people? Can I see your medals? Why did you keep it secret? He'd answered what he could, deflected the rest, and eventually she'd fallen asleep mid-question, exhausted by the day's excitement. But he knew the questions wouldn't stop. Not from her. Not from anyone. At 10:47 p.m., his phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but the number was local, and something made him pick up. Mr. Cole? This is Marissa Hale. Ethan sat up straighter, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Ms. Hale. She paused, and Ethan could hear something in her voice he'd never heard before. Uncertainty. I saw the video. Everyone saw the video. And I've been doing some research. Your military record is remarkable. Is there something you need, Ms. Hale? I need to apologize. The words came out rushed, like she was forcing herself to say them before she lost her nerve. What I did yesterday, firing you like that, publicly humiliating you, it was wrong. I didn't know who you were, what you'd done, and I should have asked, should have listened. You didn't fire me because of who I was, Ethan said quietly. You fired me because I didn't follow procedure. That part hasn't changed. But the context has. The Navy just called you in the middle of the day to help save someone's life. That speaks to a level of expertise, of judgment, that I clearly failed to recognize. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Why are you really calling, Ms. Hale? Another pause. Because I watched that video a dozen times, and I saw something I didn't see before. I saw a man who's overqualified for every job I ever gave him. I saw someone who's been hiding in plain sight. And I realized that when you used that alternative diagnostic method, you weren't being reckless. You were using the same kind of critical thinking that helped you save a pilot today. That doesn't change your company policy. No, it doesn't. But it changes my understanding of why policy isn't always sufficient. She took a breath. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss options. I have a job starting Monday. I know, I called Carlos Martinez, he told me. But please, just give me an hour. Come to my office tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I promise I'll make it worth your time. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Ms. Hale, I know I don't deserve your consideration. I humiliated you in front of your coworkers, cost you your income when you have a daughter to support. The internet is making me very aware of exactly how badly I misjudged the situation. Her voice dropped. They're calling me heartless, a corporate drone, someone who can't see value when it's standing right in front of her, and they're right. I'm not interested in revenge or making you feel bad. I'm not asking for absolution. I'm asking for a chance to make this right. 10 o'clock, please. You should say no. Should hang up and move forward with Martinez Auto and forget Hale Automotive Solutions ever existed. But something in her voice, genuine remorse maybe, or the exhaustion of someone who'd spent the day being publicly criticized, made him hesitate. 1 hour, he said finally. But I'm not making any promises. That's all I'm asking. Thank you, Ethan. She hung up before he could respond. Ethan set the phone down and stared at it like it might offer some explanation for the surreal turn his life had taken. 48 hours ago, he'd been a struggling mechanic trying to stay invisible. Now he was viral video content, and his former boss was calling him at 11 at night to apologize. He went to check on Lily, found her sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 2. Her breathing was steady, no wheezing, and Ethan allowed himself a moment of gratitude for small mercies. On her nightstand sat the prescription bag from the pharmacy, just the one inhaler, all he'd been able to afford. The other medications were still waiting, still needed, still expensive. Viral video or not, that reality hadn't changed. He went to bed but didn't sleep well, his mind churning through possibilities and problems in equal measure. Morning arrived with pale sunlight and the sound of Lily's alarm. She bounded into his room at 6:30, more energetic than she'd been in weeks. "Daddy!" Emma texted me. Well, her mom texted me on her mom's phone because I don't have a phone, but still, she said I'm famous. The video has like 1 million views. It doesn't have 1 million views, sweetheart. Well, a lot of views. And everyone at school is going to want to talk to me about it. Should I tell them about the helicopter? About how you flew it? Ethan sat up, running a hand through his hair. You can tell them whatever you want. But remember, it's not my job anymore. I'm still just your dad who happens to know how to fix cars. But you saved someone yesterday. That's so cool. I helped save someone. There was a whole team involved. But they came to get you specifically, because you're the best at it. He pulled her into a hug. I love your enthusiasm, but let's keep things in perspective, okay? Now go get ready for school. She bounced off, singing some song from a movie he didn't recognize. The resilience of children never ceased to amaze him. They went through the morning routine, breakfast, medication, getting dressed. Lily chose a different shirt today, this one with a rainbow, and spent extra time on her hair because everyone's going to be looking at me. At school, the drop-off line was its own kind of chaos. Parents stared as Ethan's truck pulled up. A few waved, one gave him a thumbs up. Mrs. Patterson was waiting at the entrance and approached the truck before Lily could get out. Mr. Cole, I just wanted to say how incredible what you did was. The video was amazing. Just doing what I was asked, ma'am. Well, it's inspired some wonderful conversations in class about service and helping others. Lily should be very proud of you. Lily beamed from the passenger seat. I am. Ethan smiled, feeling uncomfortable with the attention, but grateful it was positive. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. As Lily ran off with Emma, already deep in excited conversation, Ethan pulled out of the school lot and headed toward Hale Automotive Solutions. The drive took 20 minutes, and with each mile his uncertainty grew. What did Marissa want? An apology was one thing, but she'd mentioned options, possibilities. What could she possibly offer that would change anything? The building looked the same as it had 2 days ago, but somehow different, like he was seeing it from a new angle. He parked in the visitor section this time, not the employee lot, and walked through the main entrance. The receptionist, young woman named Sandra, who'd always been friendly, looked up and her eyes widened. Mr. Cole! Oh my gosh, I saw the video. That was incredible. Thanks, Sandra. I have an appointment with Ms. Hale. Yes, she told me to send you right up when you arrived. Her office is on the 2nd floor, first door on the left. Ethan had never been to the executive offices. Mechanics worked in the bays, not the carpeted spaces where decisions got made. He climbed the stairs, found the door marked Marissa Hale, CEO, and knocked. Come in. The office was exactly what he'd expected. Modern furniture, large desk, windows overlooking the service bays below. Marissa stood by those windows, looking down at the shop floor where mechanics were already working on the day's repairs. She turned as he entered, and Ethan was struck by how different she looked. Still professional, still put together, but something in her expression had changed. The hard certainty was gone, replaced by something more human. Ethan, thank you for coming. She gestured to a chair. Please, sit. He sat. She moved to her desk but didn't sit behind it. Instead, she pulled another chair around so they were facing each other without the barrier of furniture between them. I spent most of last night unable to sleep, she began. Reading your military file, the public parts at least. 17 successful rescue missions, 3 commendations for valor, training records that show you were one of the highest-rated pilots in your squadron, and somehow you ended up in my shop changing oil and rotating tires. I needed steady work close to home. You were hiring. But why hide it? Why not put that experience on your resume? Any company would have asked questions I didn't want to answer, Ethan interrupted. Would have expected me to trade on it, use it. I left that life for a reason, Ms. Hale. I didn't want to be that person anymore. Because of Lily. He stiffened. How do you know about... I did some research. Not invasive, just public records. Single father, daughter, with significant medical needs. You left the Navy 7 years ago, right around when she was born. Marissa leaned forward slightly. I'm not judging. I'm trying to understand. There's nothing to understand. I made a choice. My daughter needed a parent who was present, not deployed. So I left and found work I could do while being the father she deserved. That's admirable. It's not admirable, it's just being a parent. Marissa was quiet for a moment, studying him. When I fired you, I told myself I was maintaining standards, upholding company policy. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared of what? Of mechanics who thought for themselves, who saw problems I didn't see, and solved them in ways I hadn't approved. My background is business management, Ethan. I don't know cars. I don't know engines. I came into this company knowing I'd have to establish authority through policy and procedure because I couldn't establish it through expertise. She stood, paced to the window. When you fixed that Audi using a method I'd never heard of, it made me feel ignorant, exposed. So I did what insecure managers do. I asserted control through punishment. I made an example of you to show everyone else that I was in charge, that my rules mattered. And now? Now I'm realizing that my rules were protecting my ego, not serving my customers or my employees. She turned back to him. Yesterday, the Navy called you because you have expertise they needed. You analyzed complex data in minutes and saved a man's life. That same analytical thinking, that ability to see patterns and solve problems, that's what you were doing with that Audi, and I punished you for it. Ethan didn't respond. He wasn't sure what she wanted him to say. I want to offer you your job back, Marissa continued, but not as a mechanic, as a director of technical operations. You'd oversee all diagnostic protocols, train other mechanics, develop new procedures. You'd have authority to make judgment calls when standard protocol isn't sufficient. Full benefits, including comprehensive medical coverage for you and Lily. Salary of $75,000 a year. The number hit him like a physical force. $75,000. More than double what he'd been making. With insurance. With actual benefits. Why? He asked. Why offer me this now? Because I watched that video and realized I had someone extraordinary working for me, and I was too blind to see it. Because the internet is right. I'm a terrible manager if I can't recognize talent. Because I want to fix my mistake. She paused. And because I called 3 other shops this morning asking about you. Every single person said the same thing. Ethan Cole is the best mechanic they've ever worked with. Knowledgeable, precise, trustworthy. If I let you walk away, I'm not just losing a good employee. I'm losing the exact person this company needs. Ethan sat back, his mind racing. $75,000. Insurance for Lily. A position with actual authority. It was everything he'd needed 2 days ago, offered now like it had been waiting for him all along. But something felt wrong about it. You're offering me this because a video went viral, he said slowly. Because it made you look bad, and now you're doing damage control. If that helicopter hadn't landed, if nobody had filmed it, I'd still be unemployed and you'd still be satisfied with your decision to fire me. Marissa flinched but didn't deny it. You're right, the video forced me to confront my mistake. But the offer is genuine, Ethan. I'm not doing this for optics. I'm doing it because I want to build a better company, and I can't do that without people like you. People like me. People who can think critically, who put problem solving ahead of ego, who know the difference between following rules and doing what's right. She met his eyes. You could have been bitter yesterday when the Navy showed up. Could have said you'd been out too long, didn't remember the details, weren't qualified. Instead, you helped them because someone needed it. That's the kind of character I want in leadership. Ethan stood, walked to the window, looked down at the service bays. He could see Tommy working on a Ford Explorer, Miguel doing something with a transmission, Rick consulting a diagnostic computer. His former coworkers, going about their day, probably still talking about the video. I need to think about it, he said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. The offer stands whenever you're ready. I have a job starting Monday with Carlos Martinez. I know. Carlos told me you're a good man who deserves better than he can offer. His words, not mine. Ethan turned back to her. Did you pressure him to... No, he called me. Said he saw the video and realized he couldn't compete. Asked me to take care of you properly if you came back. Marissa smiled slightly. You've made an impression on people, Ethan. Even ones you barely know. He nodded slowly. I'll call you in a day or two. That's all I ask. As he headed for the door, Marissa spoke again. Ethan, for what it's worth, I really am sorry. Not just for firing you, for not seeing you, for making assumptions. You deserved better from me. Thank you for saying that. He left the office, walked down the stairs, and headed back to his truck. The morning air was already warm, promising another hot day. His phone buzzed as he climbed into the cab. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Cole, this is Commander Reeves from Corpus Christi, NAS. Lieutenant Hammond was successfully recovered and is in stable condition. He wanted me to pass along his gratitude. What you did saved his life. If there's ever anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Ethan stared at the message for a long moment. A life saved. A pilot home safe. In the chaos of everything else, that was what actually mattered. His phone rang. Jackie. Ethan, dear, I hate to bother you, but there's a woman here asking for you. Says she's with Channel 7 News. I told her you weren't home, but she said she'd wait. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't let her in the building. I wasn't planning to, but she's quite persistent. He drove home faster than he should have, pulled into the apartment complex to find a news van parked in a visitor spot and a woman with perfectly styled hair holding a microphone standing by the entrance. She approached as he got out of the truck. Mr. Cole, Jennifer Martinez, Channel 7 News. I was hoping to get a few minutes of your time to talk about yesterday's rescue. I'm not interested in an interview. Just a few questions. Our viewers are fascinated by your story. Decorated military pilot working as a mechanic, called back into service to save a life. It's incredibly compelling. It's also private. Please leave. But the public has a right. The public has no right to my story, Ethan said firmly. I helped with the rescue because I was asked, and I had relevant experience. That's all. Now I'm asking you to leave this property before I call the police for trespassing. The reporter's smile faltered. Mr. Cole, surely you understand the interest. I understand you're standing in front of my home when I've asked you to leave. That's all I need to understand. She held his gaze for another moment, then nodded to her cameraman. Fine, but if you change your mind, here's my card. Ethan didn't take it. He waited while they packed up their equipment and drove away, then headed upstairs. Jackie was waiting in the hallway. That woman was here for 20 minutes, knocking on your door. I almost called the police myself. I appreciate you looking out for us. Of course, dear. How are you holding up? This must all be very overwhelming. That's one word for it. Inside his apartment, Ethan made himself coffee and sat down to think. The offer from Marissa was generous, more than generous. It solved his immediate financial problems. It gave Lily the medical coverage she needed. It was everything he'd been desperate for 2 days ago. But it also meant going back to Hale Automotive, to the place that had fired him, to working for someone who'd only reconsidered because circumstances had forced her hand. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Tommy. Yo, everyone at the shop is losing their minds. Marissa called a meeting this morning and basically admitted she screwed up firing you. She won't say what she offered you, but everyone's betting it's your job back. Are you coming back? Ethan didn't respond. He needed to talk to someone who knew him, who could offer perspective that wasn't clouded by viral videos or job offers or public opinion. He scrolled through his contacts, found a name he hadn't called in 2 years, and hit dial. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Cole? Is that really you? Hey, Chief? Yeah, it's me. Chief Warrant Officer Marcus Webb had been Ethan's mentor in the Navy, the man who'd taught him advanced rescue techniques and how to trust his instincts when everything else failed. They'd stayed in touch for a few years after Ethan left, but eventually the calls had dwindled to annual Christmas texts. I saw the video, man. Whole squadron's been texting about it. You saved Hammond's ass yesterday. I just looked at some data. You did what you always did, saw what everyone else missed. Morrison said you nailed the drift pattern in under 2 minutes. That's pure instinct, Cole. I got lucky. Luck is what people call skill when they don't want to admit someone's better than them. Marcus paused. How are you really? That video's got to have stirred up some stuff. You could say that. My old boss wants to hire me back. Offered me a director position, good salary, benefits, but it feels complicated. Complicated how? Like, she's only offering because I became public, because it makes her look bad if she doesn't. Does it matter why she's offering if the position's good? Shouldn't it? Marcus was quiet for a moment. When you left the Navy, you told me you needed to build a life that was about Lily, not about proving anything to anyone else. Has that changed? No. Then the question isn't whether this woman's motives are pure. The question is whether this job serves what you need for your daughter. Does it? Ethan closed his eyes. Yeah, it does. Medical coverage alone would change everything. Then take it. Don't let pride get in the way of taking care of your kid. When did you get so wise, Chief? I've always been wise. You just weren't listening. Marcus laughed. Seriously, though, Cole, you've been hiding your light under a bushel for 7 years. Maybe it's time to let people see what you can do. Not for them, for you. They talked for another 10 minutes, catching up on squadron gossip and life updates. Marcus had made commander, was stationed in Virginia now, had a daughter of his own who was Lily's age. After they hung up, Ethan sat with the silence for a while. His phone buzzed. Message from Lily's school. Mr. Cole, this is Principal Henderson. We've had several media inquiries about you and Lily following yesterday's events. Just wanted to let you know we're not providing any information and have instructed staff to maintain student privacy. If you have any concerns, please don't hesitate to call. At least the school had his back. He spent the rest of the morning cleaning the apartment, doing laundry, the mundane task that kept his hands busy while his mind worked through everything. Around noon, he made himself lunch, sandwich, apple, water, and finally allowed himself to look at his bank account. The numbers hadn't magically improved. He still had $89 until a severance check that might be $1,200 arrived. He still needed Lily's other medications. He still needed to pay rent in 3 days. The decision made itself. He called Marissa's direct line. Ethan? She answered immediately. I wasn't expecting to hear from you so quickly. I've thought about your offer. I have some conditions. I'm listening. First, I want final say on all diagnostic protocols. If I determine a situation requires deviation from standard procedure, I have the authority to make that call without approval. Agreed. Second, I want education support for my team, training programs, certifications, conferences. If I'm going to lead technical operations, I want to build the best team possible. That's actually a great idea. Agreed. Third, medical coverage starts immediately, not after a probation period. My daughter needs her medications now, not in 90 days. I'll have HR process the paperwork today. You and Lily will be covered by end of business. Ethan took a breath. And fourth, if this doesn't work out, if we discover we can't work together effectively, I want a mutual separation agreement that includes 6 months severance and continued medical coverage during that period. I'm not putting Lily's health at risk again. There was a pause. That's more than reasonable given how I treated you. Agreed. Anything else? That's it? When can you start? Monday. I need to call Carlos Martinez and explain. Of course. Ethan, you won't regret this. I promise I'm going to be better. Do better. I'm going to hold you to that. He hung up and immediately called Carlos. Martinez Auto. Carlos, it's Ethan Cole. Ethan, Hey man, I was going to call you. Listen, about Monday, I need to rescind my acceptance. Something's come up. Hale offered you a position, didn't they? How did you? She called me this morning, told me what happened, what she was planning to offer, asked if I'd be hurt if you took it. Carlos chuckled. I told her she'd be an idiot not to hire you, and I'd be an asshole to stand in your way. You deserve that position, Ethan. You deserve better than $13 an hour in my little shop. Your shop is great, Carlos, and I appreciate you understanding. Just promise me something. When you're running that fancy operation over there, remember the little guys like me? Maybe send some overflow work my way when you're too busy. I can do that. Then we're good. Good luck, man. You're going to do great. After he hung up, Ethan sat back and let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. It was done. He had a job. A real job with real money and real benefits. The relief was overwhelming. He called the pharmacy next, explained that his insurance would be active by end of day, asked them to prepare all of Lily's prescriptions. The pharmacist was understanding, said they'd have everything ready by tomorrow. One crisis averted. Maybe things were finally turning around. At 2:45, he headed to pick up Lily from school. The pickup line was busy as always, and Ethan noticed several parents pointing at his truck, whispering. He ignored them. Lily came running out with Emma, both girls laughing about something. When she saw the truck, she waved goodbye to her friend and climbed in. How was school? Amazing. Everyone wanted to hear about the helicopter. I told them you were a pilot and saved people, and Mrs. Patterson said we could do a presentation about it for show and tell if you said it was okay. We'll see. Also, Emma's mom invited us to their house for dinner on Friday. Can we go? Please? Maybe. Let me check our schedule. You always say that when you mean no. Sometimes I mean maybe. She made a face but didn't argue. They drove home in comfortable silence, Lily humming to herself, Ethan feeling lighter than he had in days. That evening, after dinner and homework and the nightly medication routine, Ethan sat Lily down on the couch. I need to tell you something. She looked worried immediately. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart. Nothing bad. I got a new job today. Her face lit up. Really? Where? Back at Hale Automotive, but not as a mechanic, as a director. It means better pay and better insurance. So we can go to the Science Museum? He laughed. Yes, eventually we can go to the Science Museum. And I can get my medicine without you looking worried about money? The question hit him harder than it should have. He'd thought he'd hidden his stress better. Yeah, baby, you can get your medicine, all of it, without me worrying. She hugged him tight. Good. Because I don't like when you're worried. It makes your face do this thing. What thing? She scrunched her forehead up, creating exaggerated wrinkles. He laughed and tickled her until she squealed. Later, after she was asleep, Ethan stood in her doorway watching her breathe. In and out, steady and clear. Tomorrow he'd pick up all her medications. Tomorrow he'd have insurance cards and a path forward and something resembling stability. It wasn't perfect. There would still be challenges, still be struggles. But for the first time in a very long time, Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. His phone buzzed one last time, text from Morrison. Cole, wanted you to know Hammond's awake and asking about you. Said to tell the mechanic with the magic brain he owes you a beer. You're welcome at the base anytime if you want to visit. Fair winds, brother. Ethan smiled, set the phone down, and allowed himself to feel something he'd almost forgotten. Pride. Not in the viral video or the public attention, but in knowing that when someone needed help, he'd been there. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy Ethan hadn't felt since his first day of flight school. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 6:15 a.m., adjusting a tie he'd borrowed from his one decent suit, the same suit he'd worn to job interviews and parent-teacher conferences for the past 7 years. The shirt was pressed, the pants were clean, and he looked like someone who belonged in an office instead of under the hood of a car. Behind him, Lily appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "You look fancy," she said, her voice rough with morning grogginess. "I have to look professional today. First day as director." "Do you get your own office?" "I think so." "With a desk and everything?" "Probably with a desk and everything." She smiled, clearly pleased by this development. You should put my drawings on your wall like you had in your locker. The locker he'd cleaned out just days ago, taking those drawings with him in a cardboard box. They were still in that box, actually, sitting in his bedroom closet alongside the framed photo of Lily and his military-issue multi-tool. I'll definitely put your drawings up, he promised. After getting Lily ready for school and dropping her off, Mrs. Patterson gave him an encouraging smile and a thumbs up that made him feel slightly less terrified. Ethan drove to Hale Automotive Solutions for what felt like the 100th time, but was somehow completely different. He parked in the main lot this time, not the employee section in the back. Grabbed the messenger bag he'd bought at a thrift store yesterday. $12, barely used, good enough for carrying paperwork and looking the part. Inside, Sandra at reception brightened when she saw him. "Mr. Cole, welcome back. Ms. Hale is expecting you. She said to send you right up." The walk to the second floor felt longer than it had on Friday. His heart was doing something complicated in his chest, equal parts anxiety and anticipation. When he reached Marissa's office, the door was open and she was standing by the window, phone pressed to her ear. She saw him and held up one finger. Just a minute. He waited in the doorway, taking in the view of the service bays below, where mechanics were already arriving, punching in, starting their day. Tommy's car was in the lot, Miguel's truck, Rick's motorcycle, his former co-workers, now his team. "Sorry about that," Marissa said, hanging up. "Insurance company with questions about coverage protocols. Come in, please." She was dressed in another sharp suit, this one navy blue, but her expression was softer than he'd ever seen it. She gestured to a chair and this time sat across from him rather than behind her desk, maintaining that deliberate equality. "First, before anything else, welcome back. Officially. I know this is strange given how we left things, but I want you to know I'm genuinely glad you're here. Thank you. Second, HR processed your paperwork Friday evening. You and Lily are both covered under our premium health plan as of Saturday. I had them send you the insurance cards via overnight delivery. Did you receive them?" "Saturday afternoon, yes. I picked up Lily's medications yesterday. All of them." Something shifted in Marissa's expression. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. "Good. That's good." She pulled out a folder, opened it to reveal several documents. "Your employment contract. I had our attorney review the terms we discussed. Full authority over diagnostic protocols, education budget for training, immediate benefits, and the separation agreement clause. Everything you asked for is in writing." Ethan took the contract, read through it carefully. The salary was listed as $75,000. The benefits package was comprehensive: medical, dental, vision, life insurance, 401k matching. The separation clause was exactly as he'd specified. He pulled a pen from the messenger bag and signed. Marissa countersigned, then handed him a copy. "Welcome to leadership, Ethan. Now, let me show you your office." They walked down the hall to a room Ethan had never noticed before. Smaller than Marissa's, but still sizable, with a desk, filing cabinets, a computer setup, and a window overlooking the parking lot. The walls were bare white, waiting for personalization. "It's not much yet," Marissa said, "but it's yours. We can requisition anything you need, additional furniture, equipment, whatever makes sense for the role." Ethan set his bag on the desk, ran his hand over the smooth surface. His own office, his own space. After years of shared break rooms and crowded service bays, this felt almost surreal. "There's a staff meeting at 9, Marissa continued. "I'll introduce you formally, explain the new organizational structure. I expect some resistance. Change always brings resistance. But I want to make clear that this isn't optional. You have my full support." "What about Rick? He's been shop foreman for what, 8 years? "Rick will report to you now. I spoke with him Friday. He's not thrilled about the change, but he understands it. And honestly, he agrees with me that the shop needs someone with your technical expertise making the big decisions." Ethan nodded slowly. Rick was a good foreman, organized and reliable, but he'd been doing the same job the same way for nearly a decade. Change would be hard for him. At 8:45, Ethan made his way down to the service bays. The smell of motor oil and metal greeted him like an old friend. Mechanics were gathered near the break room, coffee in hand, talking in low voices that stopped when they saw him. Tommy was the first to break the silence. Holy shit, Cole, you're wearing a tie. Language, Tommy, Rick said automatically, but he was smiling. Good to see you, Ethan. Congratulations on the promotion. Thanks, Rick. I'm hoping we can work together to make some positive changes around here. I'm sure we can. Rick's expression was neutral, professionally pleasant, but Ethan could see the calculation behind his eyes, sizing up the new hierarchy, figuring out where he fit. Miguel approached next, extending his hand. Man, I'm glad you're back. The guy they brought in to replace you lasted 2 days before he quit. Couldn't handle the workload. That's because he was an idiot, Tommy added. Didn't know a fuel injector from a fuel pump. Other mechanics were drifting over now, offering congratulations that ranged from genuinely warm to cautiously polite. Ethan recognized the dynamics at play. Some were happy to see him return, others were wary of what his promotion might mean for them, still others were probably resentful that the guy who'd been fired days ago was now their boss. At 9 o'clock sharp, Marissa entered the bay with Davis, the operations manager who'd escorted Ethan out the day he was fired. Everyone gathered around and the easy chatter died down. Thank you all for being here, Marissa began, her voice carrying across the space with practiced authority. I want to address something directly. Last week, I made a decision that I've come to realize was wrong. I fired Ethan Cole for using his professional judgment to solve a customer's problem. I prioritized rigid adherence to protocol over actual problem solving, and in doing so, I lost sight of what this company should value most: expertise, critical thinking, and commitment to excellence. The mechanics exchanged glances. This level of public self-criticism from Marissa was unprecedented. Many of you saw the video that went viral over the weekend. You learned, as I did, that Ethan has a background none of us knew about. But here's what I want to be clear about. I'm not bringing him back because of that video. I'm bringing him back because I was wrong to let him go in the first place. The fact that he saved someone's life last week just made that wrongness more obvious. She gestured to Ethan. Effective today, Ethan Cole is our Director of Technical Operations. He will oversee all diagnostic protocols, manage complex repairs, and work with each of you to develop better procedures that balance policy with practical expertise. Rick will continue as shop foreman, managing day-to-day operations, but technical decisions will go through Ethan. Rick nodded, his expression carefully neutral. I know change is difficult, Marissa continued. I know some of you may have questions or concerns about this new structure. My door is open, but I want to be absolutely clear. Ethan has my full confidence and my complete support. If he makes a decision regarding technical operations, that decision carries the same weight as if I'd made it myself. She turned to Ethan. Do you want to say anything? He hadn't prepared a speech, hadn't anticipated being put on the spot like this. But looking at the faces of his former coworkers, some friendly, some skeptical, all waiting, he knew he needed to say something. I'm not here to throw my weight around or change everything overnight, Ethan said, keeping his voice even. I'm here because I love this work and I think we can do it better. Not by ignoring procedures, but by making sure our procedures actually serve our customers and our team. I want your input. I want to hear your ideas. And I want to build something we can all be proud of. Tommy started clapping, and after a moment, others joined in. Not everyone, but enough. The meeting dispersed, mechanics returning to their bays and their projects. Ethan caught Rick's eye and gestured toward the break room. Got a minute? Sure. They stepped into the small room, and Ethan closed the door. Rick leaned against the counter, arms crossed, waiting. I know this is awkward, Ethan started. You've been running this shop for years, and now suddenly there's another layer between you and Marissa. It's her company. She can structure it however she wants. But it affects you, and I want to make sure we're on the same page. Rick studied him for a long moment. You want the truth? Always. I was relieved when she called me Friday. I've been foreman for 8 years, and honestly, I'm tired. Tired of making every technical decision, tired of being the one everyone comes to with problems I sometimes don't know how to solve. You coming in as technical director? That takes pressure off me. Lets me focus on scheduling and workflow and customer relations, things I'm actually good at. Ethan felt tension he didn't know he'd been carrying release from his shoulders. I wasn't sure how you'd feel about this. I'm 56 years old, Cole. I'm not looking to climb any higher. I just want to do good work and go home to my wife without a migraine. If you can help make that happen, I'm on your side. They shook hands, and Ethan felt something settle into place. The rest of the morning was a blur of administrative tasks, setting up his computer, reviewing current diagnostic protocols, meeting with Davis about supply chains and parts ordering. Around noon, Marissa knocked on his office door. "How's it going?" "Good. Overwhelming, but good. I wanted to give you this." She handed him a file folder. "Analysis of our customer satisfaction scores over the past 6 months. We're at 73%. Industry standard is 85. I want you to figure out why we're underperforming and develop a plan to improve it." Ethan opened the folder, scanned the data. The numbers told a story. Customers were generally satisfied with the work quality, but frustrated with communication and unexpected costs. "I have some ideas," he said. "I'm sure you do. Take your time with it. I'm not expecting miracles overnight." After she left, Ethan dove into the data, cross-referencing customer complaints with service records. Patterns emerged. Customers felt blindsided by additional repairs that weren't communicated up front. They felt confused by technical jargon in explanations. They felt rushed through the process. These were fixable problems. He spent the afternoon drafting a new communication protocol. Mechanics would take photos of problem areas to show customers, use plain language explanations, provide written estimates before starting work beyond the initial diagnosis. Simple changes that required no additional budget, just better processes. At 2:30, he left to pick up Lily from school. The drive felt different now, less weighted with anxiety, more like just another part of a normal day. Lily bounced out of the school building, saw the truck, and ran over with her usual enthusiasm. "How was your first day as director?" "Good. Long, but good." "How was school?" "Emma's mom said yes to Friday dinner. Can we go?" "Please, please, please." "We can go." "Yes!" She pumped her fist. "Also, I got 100 on my math test. Mrs. Patterson said I'm doing really well." "That's my girl. I'm proud of you." They drove home, and Lily chattered about her day. The math test, the book they were reading in class, how Michael didn't throw up today, which everyone considered an improvement. Normal kid things, blessedly free from worry about money or medication or anything beyond the small concerns of 4th grade. At home, Ethan changed out of his suit and into comfortable clothes, then helped Lily with her homework while simultaneously reviewing diagnostic protocols on his laptop. The apartment felt warmer somehow, less oppressive. The stack of bills on the counter hadn't disappeared, but they no longer felt insurmountable. His phone buzzed, text from Tommy. "Hey boss, yeah, that's weird to say. Question about the diagnostic sequence on the BMW in Bay 3. Can I run something by you tomorrow?" Ethan smiled. Boss. He was somebody's boss now. "Sure. Come find me first thing in the morning." Another text, this one from Morrison. "Hammond's being released from medical tomorrow. He specifically asked if you'd be willing to meet him. I know you're busy with civilian life, but wanted to pass along the invite. No pressure." Ethan stared at the message. Meeting Hammond meant confronting that part of himself again, the part that had flown rescue missions and saved lives and eventually walked away. But it also felt like closure somehow, a chance to connect the person he'd been with the person he was becoming. "I can do that. When and where?" The response came quickly. "Thursday afternoon, 1400 hours, Corpus Christi, NAS. I'll put you on the visitor list." That evening, after dinner and Lily's medication routine, Ethan sat on the couch with his daughter curled against his side, watching a nature documentary about ocean life. She asked questions constantly. Why are dolphins so smart? How deep can whales dive? Do fish sleep? And he answered what he could, admitted when he didn't know. During a commercial break, she looked up at him. "Daddy, are you happy now?" The question surprised him. "What makes you ask that?" "You seem different, like lighter or something. Like that worried thing your face does is gone." He pulled her closer. "Yeah, sweetheart. I think I am happy. Things are better now." "Because of the new job?" "Because a lot of things, but mostly because I have you." She made a gagging sound. "That's so cheesy." "It's true, though." Still cheesy. But she was smiling, and so was he. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like possibility. Tuesday and Wednesday passed in a productive blur. Ethan implemented his new communication protocol, starting with a training session for all mechanics on customer interaction. Some pushed back. Miguel complained it would slow them down. Another mechanic named Steve said customers didn't care about photos, but most seemed willing to try. Tommy embraced it immediately, even suggesting improvements. What if we also give customers a timeline, like your car will be ready by 3 p.m. instead of just this afternoon? That's perfect, Ethan said. Add it to the protocol. He also started working on the technical training program, researching certification courses and scheduling. The budget Marissa had approved was generous, $20,000 annually for education, enough to send multiple mechanics to advanced training. Rick proved to be an excellent partner, handling the operational details while Ethan focused on technical standards. They developed a rhythm quickly, communicating throughout the day about scheduling conflicts, parts delays, customer concerns. On Wednesday afternoon, Marissa called Ethan into her office. "I've been reviewing customer feedback from this week," she said, pulling up data on her computer. "We implemented your new communication protocol Monday, and we're already seeing improvement. Satisfaction scores are up 7 points. In 3 days? In 3 days. Obviously, it's early, but customers are specifically commenting on feeling more informed and less surprised by costs." She turned the screen to show him. Comment after comment praised the photo documentation, the clear explanations, the transparency. "This is what I was talking about when I hired you back," Marissa said. "Not just technical expertise, but the ability to see problems and create solutions. This is exactly what we needed." Ethan felt a flush of pride. The team made it work. They're the ones implementing it. You designed it. Take the credit. Thursday morning, Ethan went through his usual routine, getting Lily ready for school, medication, breakfast, drop-off. But instead of heading to the office after, he pointed the truck south toward Corpus Christi. The drive took 90 minutes. He'd called Marissa the day before to explain he needed the afternoon off, and she'd approved it immediately. "Take whatever time you need. This is important." Corpus Christi Naval Air Station looked exactly as he remembered. Gates, guard stations, buildings painted in military gray and white. He showed his ID at the gate, explained he was on the visitor list, and was waved through with directions to Building 447. Morrison met him in the lobby, extending a hand. "Cole, good to see you again. Hammond's in the conference room. He's nervous, by the way. Really wants to thank you properly." "He doesn't need to thank me. Try telling him that." They walked down a corridor lined with photos of aircraft and squadron patches. Ethan recognized some of them, units he'd trained with, missions he'd supported. It was like walking through his own history. The conference room was small, fluorescent lit, with a table and several chairs. A young man in civilian clothes stood when they entered, mid-20s, tall, with short dark hair, and the kind of earnest expression that suggested he was taking this very seriously. "Mr. Cole," he said, extending his hand. "Lieutenant Jeffrey Hammond, I can't thank you enough for what you did." "Ethan, please, and you don't need to thank me. I just looked at some data. You saved my life. I was in that raft for 3 hours, watching the storm get worse, wondering if anyone would find me in time. And then the helicopter showed up exactly where you said I'd be." Hammond's voice cracked slightly. "My mom called me yesterday, told me she'd seen the video online. She wanted me to tell you that she's grateful, that our whole family is grateful." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "I'm just glad you're okay." They sat, and Hammond told the story from his perspective. The engine failure, the ejection, the terrifying hours in the raft. Morrison added details about the rescue operation, how the search pattern had been redirected based on Ethan's analysis, how close they'd cut it before weather conditions deteriorated. The rescue swimmer said if we'd been 15 minutes later, the swells would have been too high for safe extraction, Hammond said. 15 minutes. That's how close it was. "But you made it," Ethan said. "That's what matters. Because of you. Because you remember details from missions you flew years ago and trusted your instincts." Hammond leaned forward. "Morrison told me you left the Navy to take care of your daughter, that you've been working as a mechanic. But what you did last week, that's who you really are. A pilot. A rescue specialist." "I'm a father," Ethan corrected gently. "That's who I really am. The other stuff is just what I used to do." Hammond nodded, seeming to understand. Well, for what it's worth, this father saved my life, and I won't forget it. They talked for another hour, swapping stories about flying and military life. Morrison shared updates about the squadron, people Ethan had known, changes in procedures and equipment. It felt good, Ethan realized. Not like he wanted to go back, but like he could finally make peace with that chapter of his life. As he was leaving, Morrison walked him out to the parking lot. You know, the offer still stands. If you ever wanted to come back, even in a training or consultant capacity, we'd find a place for you. I appreciate that, but I'm good where I am. Fair enough. But Cole, you should know, what you did last week reminded a lot of people why they joined up in the first place. To help people, to be part of something bigger. You might be working in a garage now, but you're still doing that, still helping, still making a difference. They shook hands, and Ethan drove back to his regular life, feeling like something had been settled. The past and present were no longer at war with each other. They could coexist. He could be both people, the pilot who'd saved lives, and the father building a better future for his daughter. Friday arrived with the kind of anticipation that came from knowing the week had gone well and the weekend held simple pleasures. Ethan spent the morning at Hale Automotive reviewing the week's service reports, noting improvements and areas that still needed work. Customer satisfaction was up to 79%. Not perfect, but trending the right direction. At lunch, Marissa invited him to her office. I wanted to check in. How are you feeling about the first week? Good, really good. The team's responding well to the changes. I've noticed, and I've gotten calls from 3 customers this week specifically praising how they were treated. That hasn't happened in months. She paused. I also wanted to tell you something. I've been thinking a lot about what you said when you came back, about how I fired you to protect my ego, not to serve the company. You were right, and I've decided to make some changes. What kind of changes? I'm implementing a new feedback system. Monthly anonymous surveys where employees can rate management, suggest improvements, voice concerns, and I'm committing to quarterly reviews of our policies to make sure they're actually serving our goals, not just making me feel in control. Ethan was genuinely impressed. That's a big step. It's necessary. I don't want to be the kind of leader who has to fire and rehire someone to learn basic management principles. She smiled slightly. I'm also considering therapy. Apparently, I have some control issues to work through. We all have issues to work through. True, but mine were affecting good people's livelihoods. That's not okay. She stood, extended her hand. Thank you, Ethan, for giving me another chance, for helping me be better. They shook hands, and Ethan headed back to his office, feeling like maybe they were building something real here, something sustainable. That evening, Ethan and Lily went to Emma's house for dinner. Emma's mother, Patricia, was warm and welcoming, and her husband, Mark, turned out to be a high school history teacher with a dad joke repertoire that made both girls groan dramatically. Over spaghetti and salad, the adults talked while Lily and Emma disappeared into Emma's room to play. Patricia asked about the viral video. Everyone asked about the viral video, but she was tactful about it, not prying, just genuinely curious. It must have been strange, she said, having your past become so public so suddenly. It was, Ethan admitted, but it also led to some good changes. New job, better situation for Lily. Sometimes disruption leads to improvement. That's a healthy way to look at it, Mark said. My grandmother used to say that when one door closes, another opens, but the hallway between them can be hell. Patricia swatted his arm. Language. The kids aren't in the room. They laughed, and Ethan felt the warmth of normal social interaction, of friendship forming naturally without the weight of desperation or crisis. These were people who knew his daughter, who cared about her happiness, who were inviting him into their circle simply because they wanted to. After dinner, while the girls played board games, Ethan helped Patricia with dishes. Lily talks about you all the time, Patricia said, handing him a plate to dry. She's so proud of you. The way she tells it, you're basically a superhero who happens to fix cars. I'm just her dad. That's the superhero part, Patricia smiled. Emma's father passed away 3 years ago, cancer. And I see how Lily looks at you, how secure she feels, and it reminds me what kids need most isn't money or status or even stability. It's knowing their parent will show up for them. You do that for her. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and kept drying dishes. They left around 8, Lily chattering the whole drive home about how Emma had a collection of rocks, and maybe she could start a rock collection too. And did Ethan know that some rocks were actually minerals and minerals were cooler than regular rocks? We can start a rock collection, he agreed. Really? Sure, it's free. We just have to find interesting rocks. This is the best day ever. At home, Lily took her evening medication without complaint, got ready for bed, and climbed under her covers with her stuffed elephant. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? Are things going to stay good now? Like, we're not going to be worried about money anymore? He sat on the edge of her bed. I can't promise we'll never have challenges, but things are better now. We have insurance, I have a good job, and we're going to be okay. Good, because I like when you're happy. You smile more. You make me happy, Lil, every single day. She wrinkled her nose. Cheesy again. I'm allowed to be cheesy. It's in the dad handbook. There's a dad handbook? Absolutely. Rule number 1, embarrass your kids with cheese whenever possible. She giggled, and Ethan kissed her forehead, turned out the light, and left her to sleep. In the living room, he made himself tea and sat on the couch, letting the quiet settle around him. His phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Boss, I know it's Friday night, but I've been thinking about the training budget. What if we did a monthly lunch and learn? Different mechanic presents on a topic they're expert in. Build skills and doesn't cost anything except pizza. Ethan smiled. The kid had good instincts. Great idea. Let's discuss Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Another text, this one from Morrison. Hammond shipped out today. Wanted me to pass along one more thank you. And Cole, anytime you want to visit the squadron, doors open. You're still family. Family. The word carried weight. Not the family he'd been born into. That was complicated and distant and better left in the past. But the family he'd chosen. His squadron brothers who still remembered him. His co-workers who were becoming a team. Jackie across the hall. Patricia and Mark who'd welcomed him into their home. And most importantly, Lily, sleeping peacefully down the hall. He'd built this. Slowly, imperfectly, through crisis and setback and sheer stubborn determination, he'd built a life worth living. The following Monday, Ethan arrived at work to find a small crowd gathered in the service bay. Tommy, Miguel, Rick, and several other mechanics were standing around something, pointing and talking. What's going on? Ethan asked. Tommy turned, grinning. Dude, you have to see this. He stepped aside to reveal a framed photo mounted on the wall near the break room entrance. It was the viral video, frozen at the moment Ethan was climbing into the Navy helicopter, looking back toward the school. Someone had printed it, matted it professionally, and added a plaque at the bottom. The plaque read, Ethan Cole, Director of Technical Operations, Excellence in Service, on the ground and in the air. Ethan stared at it, feeling his throat tighten. We took up a collection, Rick explained. Figured you deserved recognition. And besides, it's good for morale. Reminds everyone that we've got someone leading us who knows what real excellence looks like. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep making us better, Miguel said. That's all we want. Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. The week continued with momentum building. The new communication protocol was working so well that 2 other auto shops in the area called asking about it. Marissa, instead of keeping it proprietary, encouraged Ethan to share it freely. Rising tide lifts all boats, she said. If the whole industry improves customer service, everyone benefits. Customer satisfaction hit 84% by the end of the second week, 1 point below industry standard, but climbing. Lily's health remained stable. No emergency room visits, no scary breathing episodes, just consistent management with proper medication and regular checkups. The pediatric pulmonologist was pleased with her progress. On Thursday of the 3rd week, Ethan's phone rang with an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Is this Ethan Cole? Speaking. Mr. Cole, this is Daniel Freeman with the National Transportation Safety Board. I'm calling because we're developing new training protocols for search and rescue coordination, and your name came up as someone with unique expertise in drift pattern analysis. Would you be willing to consult on the project? It would be paid, of course, and mostly remote work. Ethan sat back in his office chair. How did you get my name? Commander Reeves at Corpus Christi NAS recommended you. Said you have instincts for ocean rescue that we'd be foolish not to tap into. It would be easy to say no. He had a full-time job, a daughter, responsibilities. But this was a chance to help develop systems that could save lives beyond just Hammonds, to take what he knew and make it matter on a larger scale. I'd be interested, Ethan said. Let me hear more about what you need. They talked for 30 minutes. The project was part-time, flexible hours, focused on creating better analytical models for rescue coordination. It would mean some evening work, some weekend calls, but nothing that would interfere with his primary responsibilities. And it paid $15,000 for 6 months of consultation. After hanging up, Ethan sat quietly for a moment. Life had a funny way of circling back, of taking the pieces you thought you'd left behind and reintegrating them in new ways. He wasn't returning to his old life, but he wasn't completely abandoning it either. He was building something new, a synthesis of who he'd been and who he was becoming. That evening, he told Lily about the NTSB project over dinner. So you'll help teach people how to find lost pilots? Something like that. That's cool. You're like a teacher now, a flying teacher, except you don't fly anymore. A not flying teacher. That's one way to describe it. She took a bite of her chicken. Can I tell Emma? Sure. She's going to think it's so cool. Her dad taught history, but you teach how to save people. Emma's dad was important too. History matters. I know, but saving people is cooler. He couldn't argue with that logic. The months that followed settled into a rhythm. Work at Hale Automotive during the day, consultation work with the NTSB in the evenings and weekends when Lily was occupied with homework or play dates. Customer satisfaction at the shop hit 87% and stayed there. The training program launched with 3 mechanics enrolled in advanced diagnostic certification courses. The monthly lunch and learn that Tommy had suggested became a highlight, with mechanics taking turns presenting on everything from hybrid systems to customer psychology. Marissa implemented her feedback system, and the first anonymous survey came back mostly positive with some constructive criticism that she actually took to heart. She started holding quarterly town halls where employees could ask questions directly, and while they were sometimes awkward, they were also genuine. The shop culture shifted. People smiled more, took pride in their work, recommended the company to friends looking for employment. In November, 6 months after the viral video, a local business magazine ran a feature article titled, "How One Mechanic Changed Everything: The Transformation of Hale Automotive Solutions." The article detailed the company's turnaround, crediting both Marissa's willingness to change and Ethan's technical leadership. It included interviews with customers praising the new transparency, with mechanics talking about feeling valued, with industry analysts noting the rare example of a company that actually learned from its mistakes. Ethan read it once, then filed it away. He didn't need external validation. The work was its own reward. On a Friday evening in early December, Ethan got a call from Chief Webb. "Cole, I need a favor." "Name it." "We've got a young pilot struggling with search and rescue training. Kid's got the technical skills but can't seem to develop the instincts. I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk to him, maybe share some of your experience." "I'm not in the Navy anymore, Chief." "I know, but you remember what it was like to be where he is, and sometimes hearing from someone who's been there makes all the difference." Ethan thought about Hammond, about the rescue that had changed everything, about how one conversation, one moment of connection could alter someone's entire trajectory. "Send me his contact info. I'll reach out." 2 days later, Ethan spent an hour on the phone with a nervous 23-year-old Navy pilot named Rodriguez, walking him through the mental frameworks that had helped Ethan develop his rescue instincts. They talked about pattern recognition, about trusting your gut while respecting your instruments, about the difference between reckless and bold. "Thank you, sir," Rodriguez said at the end of the call. "This helped more than you know." "Pay it forward," Ethan told him. "When you're the experienced one, help the next nervous pilot." "I will. I promise." After hanging up, Ethan realized this was becoming a pattern. The NTSB consultation, the conversation with Rodriguez, the way he mentored Tommy and the other mechanics at work. He wasn't just doing a job anymore. He was building legacy, creating systems and relationships and knowledge transfers that would outlast him. It felt good. On December 20th, exactly 1 year after Marissa had fired him in front of his coworkers, Ethan arrived at work to find a cake in the break room with "Happy 1 Year, Director Cole" written in blue icing. The whole team was there, mechanics, administrative staff, even Marissa herself. "We wanted to mark the occasion," Rick said. "1 year since you took over technical operations, and it's been a hell of a year." "In the best way," Tommy added. "Customer satisfaction is at 89% now. We've won 2 industry awards, and 3 mechanics have gotten certified in advanced diagnostics because of your training program." Marissa stepped forward. "Ethan, when I hired you back, I promised to do better, to be better. I hope I've kept that promise." "You have," Ethan said honestly. "This place has changed. You changed it." "We changed it," she corrected. "Together, and I'm grateful for that." They ate cake, shared stories, celebrated not just Ethan's tenure, but the transformation they'd all been part of. It was a small moment, insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it mattered. That evening, Lily had a school concert, winter showcase featuring 4th grade performances of holiday songs. Ethan sat in the auditorium, phone silenced, watching his daughter stand on stage in a sparkly red dress, singing with her classmates. She looked healthy, happy, secure. After the concert, they went for ice cream, a Friday tradition they'd established over the past year. Lily got chocolate chip, Ethan got vanilla, and they sat in the shop's bright fluorescent lighting talking about everything and nothing. "Next year I'll be in 5th grade," Lily said. "That's almost middle school." "Not quite, but you're getting there." "Emma says middle school is scary." "It can be, but you'll be fine. You're tougher than you think." She considered this while eating her ice cream. "Daddy, do you ever miss flying helicopters?" The question didn't surprise him anymore. She asked it periodically, like she was checking to make sure he didn't regret his choices. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I don't regret leaving. Being your dad is the best thing I've ever done." "Better than saving people?" "You saved me, Lil. Every single day you saved me." She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "So cheesy. It's genetic. You'll be this cheesy with your own kids someday." "I'm never having kids. They're too much work." "We'll see." They finished their ice cream and drove home through the December night, Christmas lights decorating houses along their route, the radio playing songs about snow and peace and home. At the apartment, Lily took her evening medication, routine now, unremarkable, and got ready for bed. Ethan tucked her in, read her a chapter from their current book, and kissed her forehead. "Love you, sweetheart." "Love you too, Daddy. Thanks for the ice cream." "Anytime." In the living room, Ethan made himself tea and sat on the couch, looking around the small apartment that had been their home for the past 2 years. It wasn't fancy. The furniture was mismatched, the carpet was old, the bathroom faucet still dripped no matter how many times he fixed it, but it was theirs, and it was enough. His phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. "Thank you for today, for this year, for everything. You've made me a better leader and this company a better place. I hope you know how much that means." He typed back, "Thank you for the second chance. Not everyone gets one." Another text, this one from Morrison. "Rodriguez called me. Said you talked him through his training block. Kid's doing great now. You've still got it, Cole." Ethan smiled, set the phone down, and closed his eyes. A year ago, he'd been fired, desperate, struggling to afford his daughter's medication. He'd been a man hiding from his past, pretending to be someone smaller than he was, just trying to survive. Now he was director of technical operations with a team that respected him. He was an NTSB consultant helping develop life-saving protocols. He was a mentor to young mechanics and younger pilots. He was a father who could provide for his daughter without constant panic. He was, finally, himself. All the pieces integrated, the pilot, the mechanic, the father, the leader. Not hiding anymore, not pretending. Just living, just building, just showing up every day and doing the work that mattered. It wasn't a dramatic ending. There were no more helicopters landing, no more viral videos, no more sudden transformations. Just the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived, of challenges met and overcome, of a future that looked brighter than the past. Ethan opened his eyes, finished his tea, and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to prove himself. But tonight, he could rest in the knowledge that he'd built something good, something solid. something worth protecting. And that more than any rescue mission or job title or public recognition was what made him a hero. Not the dramatic saves or the viral moments, but the everyday choice to show up, to do the work, to be present for the people who needed him. That was the real story, and it was far from over.